You can hear me okay?
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Oh.
Oh, so you get the nice black, non-embarrassing headphones. I really think these headphones are a humiliation tool.
What's wrong with the headphones?
The white ones it's like a clown head. Like, I would have brought my earbuds and stuck them in here.
Well, I don't understand. Why are white headphones?
Because look at the difference between me and you. Yours, they have a nice blend. They blend into your hair and everything. The white ones, it's like a total...
Well, you have a nice gray...
It's a clown show, but I'm here.
You want to switch headphones?
It's comedy, right?
Yeah.
No, I don't want to switch headphones because that'd be a whole sanitization ordeal.
In case anybody was wondering, yes, we are both Jewish.
Scoot doo, blabbity blue, scoop dee. Oh yeah!
And I want to let you know, Danny, that my cameras, unfortunately, shut off sometimes. So I could usually hear it, but every like 5 to 10 minutes, and I'll usually do it while you're talking, so it's off camera, I will look over like that. It could be annoying, so if so, I apologize, but hey man, we haven't made it into the big leagues yet. That is your camera. If you ever want to feel like artsy and be like...
What's the frame like?
We have from head to toe, my friend.
Oh, it's a full...
So the reason it shuts off sometimes is because I hacked it to shoot unlimited 4K. So the reason I like to shoot in 4K is I normally will be tight on you, but if there's ever any action that I want to find, I have access to it. So I have 40 terabytes of hard drive space that's almost filled up in case somebody stands up.
Okay.
So...
How long's your show?
Around 90 minutes. Feel free after a half hour if you got to get out of here. If I understand
No,
the way this is going.
No, we'll talk as long as it's interesting.
Yeah. I started this thing with the idea of it being our episodes, and I wanted to record longer because then I could just, take the gold. And then George, who helps me out on my podcast, listens to all my podcasts, and he told me, keep it all in. And I trust him, and people seem to be liking it. And now these podcasts, some of them go for like 2.5, 3 hours, and I am exhausted by the end of it. So I made sure to eat before this. My adrenaline is running a little bit because you came over and there was some issues with the plugs, and I'm feeling a little uncomfortable hosting you, making you bring extra socks like you're sleeping over. But I assure you, within 5 minutes, I'll be eased on in.
Easy for me.
For the audience at home, if you were wondering why he doesn't have a beverage, he was scared to accept one in case he had to pee, and I didn't want him to use my bathroom.
That's right.
So, if you need to use my bathroom, Danny, you can. Hey, how are you?
Better than you.
Yeah. These things are tough, man.
No, they're not.
They are.
Yeah.
The color correction alone takes me 2 hours on them.
Well, that's your problem.
Yeah, because I can't light everything evenly. This has to have two-tone coloring, and ours are different. But it's good. Danny, I watched your movie, and I've been texting with you, but I didn't want to talk about it on text because I wanted to talk about it here because that's kind of, hey, everybody who's a fan of the podcast, Da 5 Bloods is on Netflix now, so check it out. And that's not all I want to talk about, but holy shit, did that get me. And I don't think I'm giving spoilers, but there probably will be, so if that bothers you, just know that now. There's a few things I'll be talking about, but the movie just changed at the midpoint, huh?
What do you mean?
I don't know if I was ignorant to what was going to be happening, but it became a different movie in the second half to me. Does that not resonate with you?
No, not to me. To me, it's one movie. I mean, it's a lot of things. That movie's a lot of things.
It's a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
It was amazing.
Well, I'm glad you liked it.
It was amazing. And I'm glad I liked it too because it would have made this interview a little bit weirder.
Well, we could talk about The Wrong Guys.
We could talk about The Wrong Guys. I still haven't seen The Wrong Guys. I've never seen The Wrong Guys. That was your comedy that you and Paul made, right?
Yeah, that's probably why.
Yeah, I haven't seen it.
No, you should though.
Where would I see it?
It's on. Just where to stream The Wrong Guys. Or if worse comes to worse, I could give you the DVD that I still have.
Okay. So I don't know if I'm doing an intro, so a little backstory. I speak to camera instead of you, I've learned I get uncomfortable giving exposition to the person who knows more than me. My Uncle Paul, who passed away a couple of years ago, almost now, and Danny Bilson have been writing partners since when?
1977.
They wrote this movie that I've known about it for probably 4 years now. When did you guys start it?
Well, when did we start it? In 2013. But they went through a bunch of iterations. Yeah.
And I don't want to get too. I mean, maybe we will.
We have to talk about the movie. You can't not spoilers. We can't talk about the movie with protect spoilers.
That's
right?
why I just wanted to let them know that there will
Yeah.
probably be some stuff coming up. And if we end up, or if I end up getting emotional, so be it. But that is not my intention at the moment. But I just do want to acknowledge that this is a very cool thing for, I'm sure, for you and your family, but also for me and my family. And seeing these billboards being going up all over Hollywood where Aunt Lauren and Miranda and Annabella live, it's just been a very, very cool thing. And I'm already getting a little bit of emotional, but I'm really proud of you guys. And I'm so glad that you agreed to want to come over and talk about it, so people that know me and maybe don't know you could kind of see, look, I have some other...
People who know you definitely don't know me. It's not a maybe. They definitely don't. But
They know what you've done.
But what's important is, if we're going to be personal about it, the family, your family, probably one of the greatest gifts of the movie is to your family. Straight up. I mean, the credit, the billboards, every poster, every trailer.
The fact that my grandma was willing to and wanting to watch that movie blew my mind.
I thought she only watched sports. I didn't think she watched linear entertainment.
No, she watches sports. She watches Shark Tank. She wouldn't get us water guns as a kid. I don't believe in them. And then this movie, Jesus. So good, man.
Yeah, well, if we're going to talk about the Bloods, we can't talk about the Bloods without Spike and Kevin. I mean, it's. I would never call it. When you say your movie, it's the collectively your movie, meaning Paul and me and Kevin and Spike, and everybody else involved, of course. But, yeah, it's a trip. What can I say? It's a trip. It's an honor. I'm really proud of it. It's absolutely a Spike Lee joint if you haven't seen it. It's 100% that, but built on a Bilson DeMeo story. Well, more than that, built on a Bilson DeMeo screenplay. That's why the credits are the way they are. But, I always say, as far as the movie, what's in it goes, everything we set out to do with that movie. And originally it was 3 white guys and 1 black guy. Melvin was always black. And there was a lot, in the original script, there was a lot, the Paul character, they had different names. The Paul character was a racist, basically. The PTSD guy had a lot of racial issues too. So there was definitely issues in the movie that were dealt with.
You're saying race?
Yeah, between them, but nothing like that. But what it was always about our generation in a certain way. It was about the vets. It was always about the Vietnam vets, our generation that could never retire. And it was always, these guys have no business being
What do you mean by never retire? What does that mean?
Meaning that people in their 60s now aren't looking like, at 65 I can retire. It's just the economy and how the economy affects that generation. But more importantly than the broader picture. That's how a lot of people can relate to it. But the Vietnam vets in particular. And I'll go back and I can explain where the whole thing came from, because the movie comes from a certain place, actually. Maybe I should just start at the beginning.
Yeah, well, what I would like to do before we get into the origins of the movie is do a brief little background of your experience in this business and with Paul. And I was surprised, because I've talked about
this. But before we do that,
I
just need to close that one point, because it's pretty sensitive. And it's that what I was going to say is we had this construct of honoring the vets of that war who were kind of forgotten and not really taken care of by the VA and wind up so desperate they're in the jungle. And in a certain sense, our generation. But they brought the Bloods. I mean, Spike and Kevin. I mean, they brought the Bloods. And that's, I was doing some interviews with them, and Spike was really clear. He said, I don't want to talk about who did what. Mm-hmm. He said, it's a collaboration between you and Paul and Kevin and I, and that's this script. And it absolutely is. And there is a lot of who did what. Of course there is.
Sure.
But this movie and why it matters and why it's so important and so much of the emotion in it and so much of what lifts it up is they brought the Bloods. I mean, this is about the African American soldier in history almost, and exemplified in the Vietnam War. So it's really important, and the reason I stopped you is I don't want to go too far into the interview without really just sort of setting the table of what we're talking about in terms of this movie, right? And
What do you mean? You mean in the terms of credit?
Yeah, I mean, it's Danny and Paul's, and we'll talk about that, right?
Right.
It's absolutely built on a Bilson DeMeo screenplay. As Kevin said in an interview the other day, well, we just blackified it. Well, they did more than that. But so much of the power of it comes from Spike and his sort of bringing all this love and emotion to the movie and all that empathy for, the black soldier in history. So we'll get to the fun part and everything, but I just want to make sure that...
What's the psychology behind that? Are you wanting to clear your bases because you're speaking publicly and you want to make sure that, hey, they are great?
Well, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I don't like when you say your movie, I'm already like, wait, that's our movie, meaning the collective 100 people.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because of what this particularly is and how important it is in terms of what it's saying and when it's released and all of that. That's like, we can't talk about this movie without all the feelings that go with that.
That's an interesting thing for me to clock from now on, because when I say your movie, I don't take that as an ownership for you. Like if sometimes my television show just got picked up to series. I just found out the other day.
Yeah, I know. Congratulations.
Thank you so
much.
much.
I didn't bring it up because I was going to save it for the conversation.
But I will refer to it, like when I'm talking to my friends and family, my show got picked up. It's not my show. Not only am I just one of 6 leads on the show, I didn't create it.
Yeah, but Rick, if you and I are talking well, we wouldn't be, but if we're talking on the balcony out here
I understand.
in the
That's
fresh
why I
air,
asked.
I would say my movie or our movie because it's your uncle, right? I'd say our movie. I would never say my in front of you because of Uncle Paul, right?
Yeah.
But I'd always say our movie or my movie. But if I'm speaking to anybody beyond the two of us...
I like how you stopped saying the world because you realize this isn't a Rogan. I talk to some of the people that listen. That makes sense.
Exactly. Then it's like, I don't want to sound like an ass.
Yeah, let's
what I mean?
move Pat. I think you did a great job with it. I was interested because I like to break down the intention behind things on this podcast all the time because I don't pick them up too intuitively, but that makes
it's your podcast.
Total sense. And so I've been talking about this movie for a little bit now because for whatever reason, I feel a sense of pride toward it because it's my family, you know what I mean?
It
and
is.
Look at this cool thing. And when I talk about it and some of my friends and they go, oh yeah, what else did he do? And whenever I mention Rocketeer, and I don't know why it's surprising to me, but it is a little surprising to me how many of my peers love The Rocketeer. And it's in a way before my time. I mean, it came out when I was a little kid, so it's not before my time. But it's not, it's not the Avengers. It was before all of that.
Your peers, yeah, The Rocketeer is a really interesting story. It got me this t-shirt I'm wearing, this Imagineering t-shirt, because a few years ago, a lot of the sort of the population at Imagineering are a lot of people your age who grew up with The Rocketeer, and they're also really into Disney stuff by the nature of where they work. And I got to do a couple of really cool gigs there, I think mainly because they were just massive Rocketeer fans. And I worked on some Blue Sky on Star Wars Galaxy's Edge and I got to work in Frontierland for...
What'd you do in Frontierland?
We ran me and 3 other guys ran a live-action role-playing game that was kind of a test for some of the story stuff for Star Wars Land. It was the best job I ever had in my life.
Explain to people what Frontierland means.
Frontierland in Disneyland?
Yeah.
Doesn't the whole world know what that is?
No, is it? I mean, I don't think people know that it's like a separate thing.
Hey, Rick.
What?
Have you ever been to Disneyland?
Yeah, isn't Frontierland, there's Disneyland and there's Frontierland?
No.
What am I thinking of?
Disneyland is one of the lands in Frontierland, and I'll bet you 99.9 or 100% of everyone else listening to this knows what Frontierland is.
Do you realize how nerdy it is to be like, you don't know Frontierland?
No, come on, man. That's not even nerdy. That's like American culture.
I'm
right?
sorry. Just answer me.
You've never been to Florida?
I've been to Disney World when I was 8. I don't know.
And it wasn't impactful on your life?
The biggest thing I remember there are 2 things I remember about it was One, the Cowabunga water slide that was really tall. I was scared to go down, and I would climb up it. And climbing up it is the line, so it would take like 25 minutes to get to the top. And I did that 2 or 3 times, and I'd always walk down. But my dad and my brother went down. So one time my dad said, just sit down, feel it out. If you don't want to go down, that's fine, but just see what it is. And I said, okay, and I did, and he pushed me down.
Oh.
And I
know that slide.
I loved it. And then I wanted to do it multiple times, and I don't think this changed me at all, but it was my first literal example of just push yourself, like past something. And I have called upon that. Even if you think something's scary, you might enjoy it. And then I just remember going to the arcade a whole bunch by our hotel, and I would use all the money, instead of playing video games, I would use it in the photo booth because I wanted to be able to take something home. I don't know Frontierland, but we'll be right back with a word from Marshall Rug Gallery. If you're looking for just the right flooring, you need choices. And at Marshall Carpet One, you'll certainly find them.
And we're back. Frontierland. It's a land within Disneyland. There's Tomorrowland, Fantasyland, Frontierland,
Right.
Adventureland,
Yeah.
New Orleans Square.
So like one of the lands has the Indiana Jones.
Adventureland, yeah.
And then one of them has the Matador.
The Matterhorn, perhaps?
No, with the bull, right? No, I said it wrong.
Yeah.
You're cockiness.
Yeah, you're a real Disney fan, aren't you?
No. I mean, yeah, I'm a fan of the movies. I don't know the park that well.
Oh, really?
I mean, cut to us just wrestling outside. Like, you don't know shit about the beast. I don't know the land much, so please tell me about Frontierland that you worked at. I thought you were talking about like you
It's
were
like
one
a
of
little cowboy town, okay? And it has Thunder Mountain, the ride there.
Right.
You really want to talk about the game? Okay, so the land was divided. I don't know if
No, I don't anymore. But I do know Frontierland. They have the kebabs. Doesn't matter.
No, that's Adventureland has the kebabs. Frontierland has the shooting gallery.
Okay. Well, listen.
And the Mexican food.
I want to you and to the audience say I'm in the wrong. I didn't know what it meant.
Right or wrong. It's just.
But I'm no longer I'm no longer as interested in you. I thought you were like developing rides or something. What were you do? What is Rocketeer? It feels like making the Rocketeer to working at Frontierland is
We were
a step.
You missed the live action role playing game part. So we were actually running a game where the guests would interact. We had some actors, we had different levels because of the unions of actors, and we were injecting story, and they would actually earn money to buy land, and they put it on a board, and they could call it wherever they wanted. So it had an objectives reward system, but it was mostly a lot of role playing. So we had people running around this land actually playing story stuff. You could put somebody in jail. They'd have shootouts that were rock, paper, scissors. It's live action role playing called LARPing, for those who understand it.
Right.
Oh, you know, one thing maybe
I do know LARPing.
Contextually, one of my jobs that I spend a lot of my time on is I'm the director of USC Games. So a lot of this nerdy stuff might be more understood in that category of my
I
life.
wanted to get into it. Sound like this is the origins into video games.
What do you mean?
Well, you and Paul wrote story for tons of games.
Yeah. Paul and I like video games. We play a lot of
what did
video
you do?
games.
I know you did 007. You did Medal. Did
The
you do
one
Medal of Honor?
Some, but the one that people kind of liked that we really did a ton of writing on was called Nightfire. It was a James Bond game on PlayStation 2. We did a ton of writing on that. We also wrote on the Harry Potter games, like the first 3 or 4 of them.
So when you were saying writing games, you're writing dialogue and story. You're not doing development?
No. You know, a lot of times in games, the developers write a version of the dialogue because they're so close to the design. And then they bring in, well, I was an executive. So I would just say, hey, Paul, we're going to England. We're doing this. It wasn't like we were hired within the team because I was a creative executive at Electronic Arts at that time. And Paul was sort of the senior story guy. You know, we're doing no chronology in this interview, right? We didn't do, this is just, everything's just like shotgun. That's okay, right?
Yeah, we edited it all together.
Because there's no context for what we're talking about. So, but anyway, because the context is we made a lot of TV, and then at a certain point, we weren't so popular, and we had to keep making money, and all of a sudden
You weren't so popular, meaning your shows weren't working, or you had a bad reputation?
No, honestly, what happened was we made 132 hours in Canada in 4 years that were both syndicated shows. So when we came back, it was almost like we'd been out of the business for 4 or 5 years. Because like in the network business, it was kind of like, you know, there's more to this story, too. It has to do... It goes back to a meeting where your uncle says, your uncle got in a creative argument in a room full of executives from a network at a certain time, at a certain period in time. And 5 years later, all those executives were now the leaders of like 4 different networks. And there was a beat where they said, we don't know if we want to hear from those guys. And we were like, well, we don't have time to screw around. Let's go make some games. It was, but that's not exactly how it went.
That's a bummer.
We made a halftime deal with Electronic Arts. So like half of our time was games and half of our time we could still write. And we wrote some screenplays and stuff during that period.
So I'll blame it on my ignorance, but just so I don't need to go in chronological order, but I do want to understand where everything is. So let me take this over for 15 seconds and asked if we could start at the point of Rocketeer, because that is my understanding of the beginning, even though you have obviously been 20 years before that. But I still want to talk about that because...
Where's the Flash?
Was the Flash before the Rocketeer?
We were shooting both at the same time.
Yeah, I knew the Rocketeer, when the Rocketeer came out, and I found out about it because it's family. I don't know if I'd be watching those types of movies yet. And then when I saw it, I thought it was so cool. And Uncle Paul lived in California, I'm in Ohio, and I wanted his autograph. And I was scared to ask him for it. And there were 2 people in my life who I wanted autographs for that I asked Dad. My dad was friends with Bill Lambier. And
I remember that.
And Paul DeMeo.
He wasn't friends with Paul DeMeo. He was his brother-in-law.
Yeah. Well, they're friends too. So I'm in Cleveland, and I want his autograph, and I'm embarrassed to ask for it because at this time I see Uncle Paul. I've met him 8 times at Christmas, and I'm 8 or something. So I get in the mail a signed Pet Fly business card. I still have it. I have multiple of them. And after I got it, every time I would see him, I'd ask him for his autograph again. I probably have 20 Pet Fly. I have one of them. I actually might want to show you. I have one of them still here. Just signed for my uncle.
Pet Fly was the name of our production company, Pet Fly Productions.
And then I got to come to California, and that's when Grandpa Ben used to do. What was the show he did background on?
Background? He had a name in the show. They even called him by his name. They said, "Hey, I think Clyde Drexler says, hey Benny, get me a towel or something."
That was my introduction to showbiz. Was Grandpa doing?
Well, Benny, as you know...
It was a Sentinel, right?
Yes,
the show?
The Sentinel. Your grandfather was a huge sports fan. You know this. Your whole family were sports. Are you a sports fan?
Basketball only. That's all I know about.
All right. Well, Benny was a big sports fan, basketball, and Paul and I were in Vancouver, and I was a big basketball fan at the time. And so I actually had the guys write me an episode to direct with basketball episode. And then we cast a bunch of NBA players. So it was like, well, I think Benny was in LA or something, and Paul said, well, he should fly up and hang out because we got Clyde Drexler, Mitch Richmond, not Bill Lambier. We had a lot of players. We had some great players and a couple of guys who are no longer with us, which is weird. Like the two of the guys who were on, we did it for 2 years. We did those basketball shows a couple times, but Malik Sealy and Lorenzen Wright are both tragic stories.
No, well,
unrelated. Anyway, Benny was up there, so we put him in the show.
Yeah.
As like the manager.
He used to wear the hat all the time.
Yeah, I know. He was. And then I remember when that episode was on, it was like huge in Cleveland. The numbers were crazy in Cleveland then.
Because everyone's watching Benny?
Everybody at the club, yeah.
That was my
by the way, I'm just talking about his background stuff. Yeah.
My introduction to show business was you guys from Rocketeer and Flash, and it's Hollywood Uncle Paul. I always had that idea of him, even though as I got older, he's Uncle Paul now.
Well, did you realize now? Let me ask you this: now that you're a Hollywood guy,
mm-hmm.
do you now realize how un-Hollywood Uncle Paul was? Now that you've been here a while,
I understand what you're saying. Yes and no. Yes, I understand. Oh, he's somebody that was fortunate enough to get work and get things made.
Yeah.
And it's tough to do that for a while. And he has made some very great stuff. Pardon me, you guys have made some very great stuff. But at the same time, I believe this is true. But this is also just my bias ingrained in me about what Uncle Paul is. He's a cinephile and he knows so much. And whether or not this is true, are you laughing? Does he not know so much? They watch him and Aunt Lauren watch obscure movies that aren't even in English. And I just felt like Uncle Paul knows what he's talking about. To this day, when, well, not to this day, unfortunately, but when I was here and in this business, I would still, anything I worked on, and when I was doing the Sixth Lead or any shows that I was on, I'd go to Uncle Paul and I'd ask him to read it. I asked for his thoughts. Some of them I would use, some of them I didn't. But you have to go to Uncle Paul. What an asset that is. And that's just
I never
the guy.
did.
No? What does that mean? When you guys are writing, you didn't want his notes?
No.
Tell me about
no,
that.
No, it's a joke.
We understand. You guys are
Yes.
best friends and you work together forever. You could be honest about that
I think
stuff.
I said at his memorial that literally thousands of days in a room, like small room with that guy. So, yeah, but this is, I don't know how many people are interested in the Danny and Paul story, but the movie stuff's, there's always got story. We haven't even gotten any of the bizarre stuff from all these movies.
Yeah, I guess we'll get into it, but I also, I do, and I think it's important to understand relationship and story and us, and forgive me if I'm wrong, Boppers, but I'm not. I want to talk about this a little bit, and I've known who you are forever. The amount I've met you, I've been around you, and conversations I've had you since after Uncle Paul's passing is way more than ever before.
Like 99%.
So, in a way, I mean, I've never had a conversation with you longer than a half hour that was just you and I. So, it's not, I want to hear about this stuff. I want to hear about Uncle Paul. I want to hear about what you didn't like about him and what.
No. There's nothing I didn't like about him.
I
I can tell you the funny stuff. I'll tell you.
Tell me one anecdote at least.
One anecdote. When every single pitch meeting, or if he was here and we were doing this interview, he would absolutely repeat what I say in different words. He'd absolutely repeat what I say. He would always repeat what I say, and in pitches it was deadly. He'd repeat what I say, and he would always drop something in about Miranda and Annabella, and it would end with, God love him. And it always had to do with something about the story.
Miranda and Annabella are my cousins, the daughters.
Something about the movie we're doing, and it's like, my girls were just watching Swing Time at home, and, they'll watch black and white. God love them. And I'm like, can I pitch? Do you mind? It's like sometimes I just wanted to kill him in those things.
Are you both talkers, or is it you mostly?
No, it's me.
Yeah.
Look, it was 40 years, so we had a rhythm, and he knew I would do all the storytelling and all the talking, and then he would come in, and at the beginning and the end, he'd talk about his kids. No. But I was thinking, the other day I said to somebody, I think it was Lloyd, the producer on the movie, who Paul and I have worked with since. By the way, Lloyd Levin, who produced Five Bloods, Lloyd Levin also is a producer on The Rocketeer. So,
oh wow,
this is all a friendship thing. Like we just take our stuff to Lloyd and see what happens, especially in the last 12 years. But it goes back all the way. So I said to Lloyd, I had some interviews to do the other day with Kevin and Spike, and I said, well. If Paul were here, I'd be going, okay, Paul, look, we're only going to have like 2 minutes to tell our part of the story. And we would have had to carve it up so he didn't start repeating. So that was...
I want to also bring up the fact that you have, your daughter is Rachel Bilson, who is, a lot of people know who that is, obviously. And
but he was repeating because he wasn't listening. I had to cap that off. That was the whole gag. Because he wouldn't listen to the pitch because he didn't care. He'd heard it already. So that's why he'd repeat what I said, because he wasn't really listening. Anyway, I want to finish that story. Rachel Bilson, my daughter. Yeah.
So I bring that up because you're saying he always brought up Miranda and Annabella.
No, never.
You said it, my daughters.
No, he brought them up. I never brought Rachel up.
So is there something about not bringing her up that is just... If she wasn't an actress, would you be connecting with Uncle Paul about talking about our kids? And
no, I'm trying to pitch a movie.
So it has nothing to do with family.
It was like, do you mind? Right? It's like, Paul, come on. I'm working here.
Uh-huh.
And it wasn't, and it was almost consistent. Right? I'm telling the story.
Do you tell him
it didn't happen once. Yes, I told him.
There's something about you. You have this. Both 2 times you've said, "Hold on, I want to make sure I finish this part," which I think is important and makes sense. You're obviously a storyteller, and you want to make sure everything is contextualized properly.
I also do a lot of interviews.
So, but that need of control that I'm feeling from you, is an interesting dynamic for if somebody is repeating and or talking about family or something, when you're like, I want to get this point across, that recognizing in a different way the need for control that I have, that could be frustrating, more so than somebody like Paul, which is, he's just, I mean, so loud. Hold for sound. Somebody like Paul who does, hold for sound again. The girls would make fun of Uncle Paul all the time about how he just kind of just trails off.
Yeah, they would do that.
So how does that affect you guys in a pitch versus you guys when you're working together and you don't have to represent yourself a certain way? Like, were you ever able to say to Uncle Paul, hey man, you know, because you're a team, you kind of, there's a political game to that.
Look,
which I don't quite understand.
You didn't, here's the weird thing. Your aunt, Lauren, didn't really for 40 years see our dynamic until your uncle was sick. Because then she saw on the phone what our routine was, but she was never exposed to it. Because we'd go to work and we'd live in an office all day long. But we had a dynamic like any comedy team, any partnership. And half of it was a comedy team because the only way we stayed sane was with gags. I mean, we would mock everything. Mm-hmm. Politically incorrect. I mean, just all kinds of shit we would bullshit about in that, whatever that office was. Literally, I was in a room with that guy from 77 to 2018 with time off for, you know, I was an executive and he was in another room. We weren't always in the same room together. But if I think about my writing career, it's all about that. And all the TV shows, or I should say my film career. The game career, we were separate and together. So we did lots of stuff together, but he had a different office and he managed a little team and they were doing writing stuff and I was running the whole business.
No, but I want to know specifically if this question even makes sense to you and you're comfortable talking about.
Okay, I know what you're getting at.
Which is, you know, you guys, I don't know. Were
you at the memorial for Paul?
Yeah.
Okay, do you remember what Howard Chaykin said?
I don't remember
I think this is what
much.
you're getting at. So the chemistry between us,
yeah,
it was perfect.
Are you feeling emotional right now about that? All right, do you
You don't have to call it out. It's fucking obvious, right? There's a camera like this.
Oh,
no. Are you feeling emotional? I'm not in therapy, man.
Okay. You don't listen to my podcast then.
I
don't pick up on everything, and I have to ask.
But I will say that I appreciate, from the week I spent in the house when Paul died, I got a sense of your humor. Seriously, I got a sense of it, of your trip, and it's cool. It's very unique. And it's cool.
I
mean, it's yours.
Thank
and
you.
That's what every entertainment artist wants to have, their own voice. Yours is absolutely yours. So I got a little hip to it. But so where were we? We're talking about the chemistry. And I got choked up, of course. So look, I get choked up all the time on this one, right? It's.
I saw that from it was an interesting thing to see. And it makes total sense, but you came. I was there. I'm at their place all the time since I moved here. I mean, I was always close to my family, but once I moved here, I'm at their house all the time. I love. It's my family. It's my family that's here. You know, and then Uncle Paul dies, and the guy who I've known about forever, who I've met a couple of times as a kid, is now over every day, and you were the mess. It was it made me, for whatever reason, feel so close to you that it was like, wait a minute, is this his husband? Like, you're coming over here and like Lauren is calming you down in a way, and it just made me feel very, very close to you, to a way that I asked you to come on this podcast because I'm interested about the movie, but it's like, Danny lives in the Valley, come over. You know, after the grieving process, we talk every now and then in text if I message you something, but. So yeah, maybe I'm digging into this more than you want to, and more that's necessary. But this is what is interesting
look,
me.
I'm a showbiz guy too. I'm always concerned about what do they care about, right? So it's like
you mean the people watching the podcast?
Yeah, this isn't just you and I sitting here. There's a microphone in my face and a camera right there.
I'll tell you, my podcast is either goblins farting and shitting on people. I have somebody animate stuff, or it's me talking too much, asking questions, and crying. So they already know what they're watching. You know what I mean? You don't realize this, but this isn't going out to the masses.
No,
This is going
well-
out to people who have already seen me try and figure out what people mean.
I have all kinds of social media experiences that are negative, more like a politician, because of corporate jobs, and I always hold these jobs where I can be a target. So that's why some of the way I talk on camera.
All right. Well,
But that doesn't mean I won't talk about it. I'm talking about it, right? About Paul.
Yeah.
So yeah, the chemistry was. He only was tough creatively, not as a human, right? You know that, right?
yeah, and I didn't know him. I only knew him
But
as a
he
human.
could be a complete butthole over some stupid script point where he was just being a complete idiot.
How would he feel about the way this movie
I used to
came
just
out?
say, I used to just say dog with bone. I wouldn't even say anymore. Like he'd be going rah, 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 and I just go dog with bone.
How
Because he
would-
would just hold on to one stupid thing. But honestly, the older we got, the less we wasted time arguing. Because really, the more professional we got, like when we were younger, we'd fight over. It would take like months to write a script because we'd argue over every line. But the more we sold, and the older we got, it was like fuck that. Let's just get it done. And not one thing is that important. And we also taught screenwriting for a long time.
Both
So-
at USC, correct?
Yeah. I mean, I still do teach at USC, and Paul was teaching when he
Yeah.
passed away.
Tell me how you feel Uncle Paul would feel about the movie.
He'd be really excited and really proud.
Yeah.
Because Paul, massive Spike Lee fan. I mean, massive. Like he watched. I told Spike that he saw like every Spike Lee movie. He watched every episode of She's Gotta Have It on Netflix.
All right, we're going out of order. I want to make sure we get enough about the movie. I want you to talk to me.
You wanted me to talk about the Rocketeer, right?
Yeah, but we'll get back to the Rocketeer. I always wanted people to know the dynamic and how long you guys been working together. And even though it was before that, that was like my inception into show business, and I kind of just wanted to get that out.
Well,
there.
yeah, I was going to ask you, are you here because of Paul?
No.
Are you sure?
Of course, I'm not sure.
I mean, isn't it that if Paul was not in your life,
I think.
would you have thought that this was possible enough to come out here and try to do what you're doing?
Yeah. The truth is, I wanted to do comedy, and I thought I was funny, and it's either New York or L.A. That being said, Lauren and Paul being here was one of the reasons and the levels of confidence I have of choosing L.A. And also, would I have moved here? Yes. Would everything have been the same? It's hard to tell.
No. I just wanted to know if you felt like it's believable.
It gave me more
because
confidence.
it was in your family, and you, for some weird reason, you have a show business family. Culturally, it's really weird. It's like when I met the Glassmans. It's like they could be in Hollywood, like my grandparents were. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? It's like
I did grow
they
up
could
with
have been a
people
Hollywood family.
who have accomplished things in the entertainment business, and that did make me feel confident. I would say that the biggest
Who?
my grandpa Sid.
Oh yeah. I forgot about your mom's side. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And her friends love.
So that's another
my Aunt
thing.
Lolly and Simon.
That's another thing. You were LA connected from your mom. I forgot that.
Yeah.
Okay.
But when I moved here, the day I got here, I drove here from Cleveland, and boy were my feet tired. And the day I got here, it was
that a joke?
yeah.
Okay.
I just flew in from Cleveland, and boy are my arms tired.
See, I don't know the source joke, so I didn't get the.
Well, if you don't know the source
Yeah.
joke, well then
Sorry.
I'm fucked.
That's why I had to ask.
So I got here in the early evening, and I had a show at the Comedy Store in the Belly Room that I signed up for on Craigslist 2 weeks before, and I needed to bring X people. I didn't even go to where I was staying. With my car filled with stuff, I parked in front of Lauren and Paul's place, and I walked down to the Comedy Store, and Lauren and Paul came, and they came to my first ever show in Los Angeles, and from then on, I was at the Comedy Store 2 or 3 times a week. I always parked there. I would park there. They would give me a parking pass. I'd walk down. I would bomb. I'd walk back up. And then Uncle Paul would watch a movie with me. And, having a support system of not only somebody who lives here, but who's in the business, who could tell me it's hard, who I've seen accomplish stuff, was absolutely an inspiration to me. But to be completely honest with myself, stand-up comedy at the time was separate than movies. And I moved out here originally for stand-up. I think.
No, but I forgot about your grandfather.
So I want to fill up my coffee, and then I want to get into a little bit about the process of what it was like to write this script in 2013 to 7 years later. Nothing to drink. I'll let you pee here.
Get your coffee.
Okay. I'm in a position here where I was like, I want to stay on your phone as long as you want. I was just waiting for you, but then I thought maybe he doesn't know I'm back. It's kind of like
I didn't know you were back.
it's kind of like sometimes when if I'm waiting for somebody, but I also have to actually clear my throat, and I'm scared to clear my throat because I don't want them to think I'm going. But like, no, it was a real throat clear. However, I'm ready. You know, I think the closest thing I could relate to that is the passive aggressiveness of clicking a bell at a front desk when people are there. Does that make sense?
Are we rolling? There's a mosquito buzzing me out here. Okay.
Okay. So you wrote a movie in 2013, and would you mind, because I want this for me too, but also I think this is cool, like stuff to talk about. The process of making a movie, as I've been told by everybody that like all the relationships that I've built of people who like could help me out in the business, and I've talked to them about stuff, everybody says, don't make a movie. It takes too long. It's impossible to get made. TV. It's all about TV. Bill Lawrence, who was my first boss on Undateable, who has done many television shows, anything I've ever shown him, if it's been a story for a movie I want to do, he goes, yeah, if he liked it, make it a show. Do you agree with that? Or because you're a movie guy, relatively speaking, at this point.
Well, Paul and I never set out to do television. We just wanted to do movies. We were movie heads, right? You know it.
Mm-hmm.
But who gives you a camera and when? At that time, when we were younger, so, you know, we started in B movies in the 80s, right? With the Trancers and Zone Troopers, all Eliminators. I always used to say all the ERS movies. But the people who gave us another gig was TV right away. And so we just went where the camera was. I always was conscious of that. It's like, we're making the choice to do this because they're giving us a camera. And so that's why we did the 132 hours of TV. And there's some really weird stories along the way. You know the Roger Rabbit Watchmen story, right? Because that's a classic it's a classic bad story. So
Let's dive on in.
No, it's a good one. It's like, how do you lose 2 giant projects in like 2 months? So back when after the Rocketeer, we were at Disney. We had a deal. That's when we were flying high. We had a whole suite of offices at Disney and the animation building. We had another suite of offices at Paramount.
After the movie is a success,
yeah,
right?
because we had a TV deal at Paramount at the same time, right? Because we went from Warner Brothers to Paramount in the middle of that. And yeah, we had 2 offices on both sides of town. We had a development deal for features at Disney and a TV deal at Paramount. This is like 92, I guess. This is 92 or 93. So when we're at Disney, they want to do a Roger Rabbit sequel. And Paul and I pitch our version of it. And they're like, yeah, let's do that. We'll have Bilson DeMeo do it. Because now we weren't under contract, but we kind of were, right? We had an overall deal there. And I remember Rob Minkoff was the director at the time, who had directed The Lion King, the animated one. And we went out to the set of Hook to talk to Spielberg and Kathy Kennedy and Frank Marshall and them. And we're like, we're in, right? Oh, by the way, Bilson DeMeo dream never fulfilled was to work with Lucas or Spielberg. It almost happened not a million times, 3 or 4 times, and this was one of them, but never happened. More to that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
Wait until they see this podcast.
there's some weird stuff about that and The Sims.
Go on, tell me more
Anyway,
about this story.
we're on the. Okay, so what happened was, we pitched the Roger Rabbit thing, and it was really cool. It was kind of like in the Singing in the Rain vein, where it was when the silent movie star had a horrible voice. So she goes to Toontown and gets a potion from the witch from Snow White to fix her voice. That's what I remember about it. It was cool. So we're all set to do that, and we had an agreement to write Watchmen. I think there had already been one draft. This would have been the next one. And this is 93.
Watchmen, a film.
Yeah, the movie. And we loved that comic book. That was like our favorite.
Yeah, I know Uncle Paul loved graphic novels.
Certain ones. Yeah. Especially back then. We were really into those in the 80s and early 90s.
And I think it's cool to acknowledge that that at this time, maybe it's obvious, superheroes aren't cool. Superheroes are nerds. This is when, it's not what X-Men did to pop culture now with comic books. I mean, not everybody knew these stories.
Well, in the 80s, there were revisionist comics. Okay, look, I'm going to get through the Lion King thing, because this other stuff's another story about all our origin stuff with comics.
The Lion King story, you mean the Roger Rabbit story?
Sorry, that Lion King director, Roger Rabbit story, right. Anyway, so we thought we were going to do it. So then Larry Gordon, who we've known for years and years, and he had done The Wrong Guys, one of our failed comedy movie. Well,
Uncle Paul said after The Wrong Guys, you decided you're not doing comedies anymore.
Right. We didn't.
And boy, were your arms tired from writing that.
We did not do comedies anymore. We always had humor in our stuff. We never went out at trying to do a comedy after The Wrong Guys. And I just wrote one now, but that's the first time since then, and I had 4 partners on it. But that's something that I just finished. Anyway, back to the story. So Larry Gordon called, and so when we took the deal at Disney after The Rocketeer, Larry Gordon had been the producer of The Rocketeer and had developed it with us, with Lloyd Levin. And he had offered us a deal with his company, which was called Largo at the time, an overall deal, and Disney offered us one. And we picked Disney because it was a dream of ours.
Wait, I'm confused. You were talking about Roger Rabbit.
I'm just giving you a little background to get to the conflict point, okay? So the background is...
I'll be Uncle Paul in this one.
You're going to get it, all right?
Okay.
It's coming. The whole tie-in is about to happen. So we had not taken a deal with his company, took a deal with Disney, because we had always wanted to make a Disney movie. So now we're about to do Roger Rabbit, and he calls us up and he said, that deal you guys had for Watchmen? He goes, you got to write Watchmen. You can't write that Roger Rabbit movie. I got a contract right here that says you got to write it. And I think this had a lot, because nobody enforced those writing period contracts. He was pissed because we took the other deal and didn't took that. That's what I always thought, because he called up and he'd go, hi, Paul. Hi, dummy. I'm still in contact with him through Lloyd even now. So it's all comedy. But so he said, you got to write Watchmen. So we're like, oh, fuck. So we can't write Roger Rabbit. So we have to lose that. But, okay, we get to write Watchmen. And then we get a call from ABC that says, that pilot you made last year for The Human Target? We want 7 episodes for mid-season. We want you to start shooting in September. And this is like July.
And that's just something that was already established, so that was your first position, basically. You had to do that over anything else.
Well, no, we chose the camera. So what happened was, yes, I felt obligated to do those shows. I don't know about first position or legalities.
But you thought this is a guarantee.
Well, it's like they're giving me a camera. I got to go shoot. So we
Right,
called up
sense.
Larry, and we said, Larry, we can't do Watchmen right now because we got to go do these 7 episodes, but after that, we'll do Watchmen. And he said, you got to do 7 episodes? You're off Watchmen. So in 2 months, we lost the Roger Rabbit sequel and the Watchmen thing for 7 episodes of The Human Target, which was not our greatest achievement in our careers. You ever seen it? It's not the worst, but well, I don't know. You ever seen it?
I knew you did it. The name sounds familiar, but I don't remember.
That doesn't matter. So it was 7 episodes. They actually...
The Viper and the Sentinel. Excuse me, the Viper and the Flash are the shows that I remember the most.
And the Sentinel. And
I don't remember the Sentinel that well.
You remember Viper?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay.
There's actually a comedian friend of mine who his name is Jay, who when Uncle Paul passed away, and he's a friend, but realistically, I see him at comedy clubs. We don't know each other that well out of comedy clubs. We don't really text each other. And he sent me a text because he saw Uncle Paul's name mentioned, and he didn't know that we were related because it's not the same last name, and he couldn't believe it. He showed me. I don't remember if it was you or Uncle Paul. He showed me a box set and something he had that one of you two signed. And he messaged me about Defy Bloods when it came out, and I'm actually glad I'm thinking about it. Jay said he's a huge fan of yours. And I thought that was cool that he basically it was a condolence call, but he found out through him. So he's a huge fan of the Viper. So shout out to Jay Mandium. We'll put his Instagram handle up here. Anyway, I'm sorry. Go on.
I think I know who he is.
How do you know who that is?
He's a stand-up.
Yeah, you know Jay?
Yeah, I know who he is.
Oh, yeah,
I think I signed something for him once.
Yeah, he sent me a picture of it. Yeah. It's just, there's also, and I told you about before, like...
that comedy we made was all stand-ups. You remember that, right?
I didn't know about it until...
You know about it right now. You know about it now. It was all stand-ups. That was the whole gag.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was all cast. It was all stand-ups.
Yeah, and stand-ups, 1 in 20 could act. Was that the problem?
No. The problem was nobody told us that stupid wasn't funny.
Stupid's very funny.
Well,
Watch this. See?
yeah. So, anyway, you should check it out. But it's got some great people. I haven't watched it in 20 years. I should. It has some great. You know who's in it, right?
No.
Richard Lewis. You know
Oh,
who he
right.
is,
Uncle
right?
Paul, yeah. I
Richard-
forgot that was Uncle Paul and he were buddies because of that.
Richard Belzer, John Goodman, Franklin Ajay, Tim Thomerson, Louis Anderson. Biff Maynard was a comic back in the day and a friend of Thomerson's. Tim Van Patten, Ernie Hudson. Rita Rudner is in it.
And it just bombed, huh? It was not funny to you?
Well, it's very silly.
I want to see it.
You should see it. You might like it. You know what? You'll like it. How can you not? It's Uncle Paul's stuff. You'll see his humor all over it.
So, but let's go. Let's make sure still we talk
The
about
Wrong Guys, it's called.
We'll have to look to see where it's streaming, but I'll put a link in the description where you could check it out. But let's talk about The Five Bloods and 2013. You guys start this story.
Yeah, there's something to that.
Uncle Paul is big into war stuff. Is that the same as you?
I don't think I'd ever say that Paul was big into war stuff.
Oh, he knew everything about it.
History.
Well, he talked to me about the history and wars a
Well,
lot.
but we both had a lot of common interests, but they're very common interests of two guys who grew up in the generation we grew up in and watched the movies on TV that we grew up watching. So we had all the same references as Lucas and Spielberg because we watched those same movies. We're a little younger, but we're the same generation basically. We had the same old movie on TV that, my story was I would fake sick and stay home for like a week with some phony flu so I could just watch old movies all day. So Paul and I, when we met in college, right? We met in college, you know that, right? That I'm sure our hookup right away was movies, and probably our hookup at the end was movies. I think that was it. I mean, I'm a huge sports fan. Paul dabbles in being a sports fan. He's not really, but a little bit. He appreciates it. But I'm a huge sports fan, more like everybody else in your family. But our connection was always movies, and I would say that every Monday it was always, what'd you watch this weekend? Discuss the movie. Not in a big scientific, not in a big intellectual way. Just, what was good, what did you like, what did you not like. It was always, what'd you see this weekend? Every Monday it was, what'd you see this weekend? Not how's your family, not what did you do, not how are the girls. It was always just, what'd you see this weekend?
You gotta let me, and I apologize if this feels aggressive of me. There's certain things I want to know, like details on. You finish a script in 2013-ish,
Okay.
and then what do you do? What is guys that have been in this business for 20 years that every time, but 30 years, but it's still like you said, Rick. Now that you're out here, you know what it means. Thinking of somebody who's been in this business for 30 years, who has accomplished so much, you would think it would be easy. It's not.
Oh,
it's
come on.
Every project's hard, and here you guys are, being in this business for as long as you are. You have this script that you believe has something to it. You have momentum for it for years before Spike even had it. What is the process of guys who are in this business, who now are on the older end of it, who have a script that is great? What do? You go to your agents and you say, this is it, let's send this to people?
We didn't have an agent anymore at that point because we'd been in the game business for a while and dabbling in movies and TV, right? We really weren't doing much for a few years because we were making
Which makes it
video
even
games.
harder for you now.
Yeah, no. And before that, there was a gap in games where we stopped, and for about 4 years or 5 years, we just went back to writing. And this is like 2004 to 2008, so it was 4 years. And nobody gave a crap about us anymore. We couldn't even get anybody to read our stuff.
Was that because of your age?
Yeah, well, I can't say.
You
Right?
don't know, you mean? Did you feel that was what it was? I know Uncle Paul felt a little bit that
Yes,
it gets a little bit tougher when you get older.
of course, but I don't like making excuses.
This isn't an excuse. It's just,
It's yes, of course. We couldn't get arrested. When we got to the point where we couldn't get our stuff read, that was like really, that pissed us off, right? It's like we can't even get our stuff read.
What do you
And
mean by that? Like, you mean by agents, by meetings?
Well, we had this one agent back in that time, and it seemed like he'd submit stuff. We never hear anything. It's like
Right.
nobody's reading anything. Like nobody cared.
Right.
And the stuff was good. Like I still have a lot of material from this period that we wrote because we were always writing. That's good stuff. And
Why was
I'm
this script
rewriting
different?
something right now just to take it back out. Something that Paul and I did. Also, it also anything I sell that we have a bunch of stuff, so I plan on anything I can still sell so that Lauren can get half the money.
That's nice. But tell me why this script was different.
Oh, Bloods? I mean, it was called The Last Tour.
Right.
Okay.
That's how I knew of it.
When you say why it was different, I think you would be, well, it's a little different for Bilson DeMeo. You did all this comic book stuff and all this light stuff. What was it? So we'd both come out of that company that was going out of business, and the way they would let us go felt lousy. I had opportunities to be in video games or stay, do I want to look for another executive job? I really didn't. I wanted to get back to writing, and it was really, we got to write one to get ourselves back in. We got to write a killer. And the movie came from, I was really pissed. Paul was really upset, like when we wrote that movie. That's when they moved out to the desert. And frankly, he was nervous about finances at that point.
Right.
Things were not good when we wrote The Last Tour. And I think that helped take us to a much more serious kind of movie than we'd ever written before. Mm-hmm. And when I started to talk before about the guys can't retire stuff, that's what we were feeling like. It's like we were just hosed, and some of that feeling absolutely went into the script. The other thing where that came from was when we went to Cal State San Bernardino in the mid-'70s, there were 3 bases, and guys came back from Vietnam and stayed there and went to school with us. So when we went to school, a lot of our friends and peers were Vietnam vets. And that creates an interesting environment. If you grow up with Vietnam on TV, and Paul had to register for the draft. I was the last year to have to register. His was the last year they called numbers. I knew I was pretty cool. He still had to go through the number drawing. So we lived through that. And to give anybody who doesn't understand what that is perspective, there was a writer a few years ago who wrote something like, what people need to understand is they were killing us. I mean, literally, you get drafted and you're just a guy in high school or college. Next thing you know, you're in Vietnam. But when you got drafted, you felt like, at least anybody in the culture I was around, a death sentence, right? It wasn't anything other than that, at least in the culture that Paul and I grew up in.
Without pride for it, the way it seems to be from a certain side romanticized at that time.
Well, Vietnam was not really romanticized except for like the Green Berets. It was, remember, the whole place was on fire because people were pissed off.
That's what the conflict was in the country. That's what I mean.
Yes, and we're seeing some of the same people on the same sides of this stuff, right?
I want to make sure that we don't go too far over.
All right.
I still want to talk.
No, this is the origin of the script,
Okay.
right? So we wanted to write a Vietnam movie, but our only writing teacher we ever had was John Milius, who wrote Apocalypse Now. So we were always huge Milius fans, and also Paul and I worked with John as well on some game stuff until John got sick, and then Paul and I used to visit him. I don't want to digress. That's a whole other thing. Because one thing about us is we come with a lot of stories.
Yeah,
right. We come with a lot.
We
of
all
stories.
know that.
Right.
I want to.
So the Last Tour. The script was called The Last Tour because it was about these Vietnam vets who go back. You know what it's about on this tour, and it's basically. I said earlier it was 3 white guys and 1 black guy, and the son dynamic is in there. And it's the same movie, but it's not the same movie, right? It is. So it's absolutely this collaboration, but that's where the script came from in 2013. So Danny, what'd you do with it? You didn't have an agent. Well, I called Lloyd, okay?
Uh-huh.
Actually,
Lloyd Levin.
Yes, before we wrote the script, I said, Lloyd, got this idea for this movie about guys going back to Vietnam looking for CIA payroll gold, a little bit of Treasure Sierra Madre, but it's really about the vets and that we don't take care of our vets and desperate men kind of movie. So he's like, that's fucking great. You guys should do that. So we wrote it, and we wrote it really fast. We wrote it in like 3 weeks. It wrote really crazy fast because we were really inspired. And then we gave it to Lloyd. And, he had some notes, and of course, like he always does.
So what does that mean? So we're talking to me, and we're talking to people who are just moved out here a year ago. So you had this connection with this big person in the business.
No. Somebody who's pretty much in the same, at that point in his career.
Oh, is he not doing stuff since Rocketeer?
No, he'd made a lot of movies. But
Yeah.
after United 93 and after Green Zone, he wasn't so popular because Green Zone was, I think, a great movie, but nobody wanted to hear
All right,
about America in
So
Iraq.
I understand. So here's just another connection of the business that you guys all want to come up together.
He was fighting hard and we were fighting hard. Let's just put it that way. And we were friends for a long time.
And what does it do for you on a professional level to bring it to him? He's just another asset that
He's
can
a
help.
producer.
And he can help show it to people.
He's a producer.
Right.
And a producer, and the way he works, his strategy is always attach a director. The last tour never went to the studios. It never went in any kind of submissions like that. What Lloyd did was he started calling directors. And after a certain amount of time, Oliver Stone was interested, and then we developed it with Oliver Stone for a couple of years. And so once we went to Oliver Stone, I'll tell you about the script. The very first script had a different ending. It was, I call it the Milius script. It was more inspired by John, in a sense, that in the third act, Norman was still alive, kind of like Colonel Kurtz. He was like a bandit in Cambodia, and he was the bad guy running the whole thing. And he was using them to find the gold. And he was completely disenfranchised from the war and from them. He felt like they left him behind and all that stuff. That was the first draft. Oliver Stone said, I really think it should be more Treasure Sierra Madre. And we were like, all right, that's cool, as far as, and that's really changed the structure to most of what it is right now in the third act, to where it was really the gold that beat them.
The gold,
The
you said.
gold, right. And themselves.
Is that a common thing where it's like, we're thinking Treasure Sierra Madre, where you use other movies as reference points to kind of like structure stuff?
No, it's not common, and we don't do it hardly ever. It just happened to be these old guys going in for gold. That is the movie. And the connection was, I believe Oliver wanted to do the movie because he wanted to get at Treasure Sierra Madre somehow.
So what happened? Why did
and
that
I think
fall through?
same for Spike. What?
Why did that fall through with Oliver?
Well, the story is, what happened was, so we wrote a draft, and we changed the third act, and it was a really good draft, and he's decided, I think as I recall, he didn't like our dialogue. And I'm like, well, have him circle the stuff he doesn't like, and we'll just go at it again. Nope, he wanted somebody else to rewrite it, some guy he liked. So that guy did a rewrite that took 10 months, and that came back, and a couple months later, Oliver didn't want to do the movie anymore. And I'm not sure why exactly. I heard rumor that he didn't really want to just deal with the physicality of going back into the jungle. I can't really be credible on the answer to that.
So basically there's a year waiting period for this to move forward. Then you
it
find
was
out.
about 18 months to 2 years all in.
So now he's out.
So we get the script back, right?
And Lev is still obviously attached.
Yeah. And that's all friendship. I mean, well, I think he optioned it, actually. So we got it back, and we put the script back
What
the
year
way
is
we
this
wanted.
now?
2016. We put the script back the way we wanted. And then it took about another year. In 2017, it took another year for Lloyd to get it to Spike. And he had read an article that Spike was interested in Treasure Sierra Madre. And that's how he got it to the agent. Agent number 1 liked it. Agent number 2 liked it. And then Spike liked it.
So that's how you do it. You have to basically, like a video game, you have to beat the mid guys first. These people have to like it before it even gets to Spike.
There's no rules. It's all different, right? But the agent's always going to read it before the client or the manager or somebody is.
Yeah.
Right? It wouldn't go direct. Anyway, and then they got it, and they really liked the structure, and what happened was Spike had always wanted to make a movie about the Bloods. There's a book called Bloods that's letters from Vietnam from the black soldiers, and that was a big inspiration because Paul and I read it right away when we knew that that's what Spike's inspiration was. It's a great book. And they brought the Bloods to the script, and they elevated what they added. That we loved all the most of what they did is stuff that we can't do, right? I mean, it was all that Black Power stuff. We thought that's cool. We thought this is awesome.
You can't do because you're not educated in it.
We're not black.
But why? So
Well, you don't write outside your culture, right? It's cultural appropriation. So what they brought to it was we got all the values that we wanted in the script, and then they brought all those on top of it. So the thing is a sort of it's quite a package of themes.
Yeah. So when it gets past Agent 1 to Agent 2, or I guess 2-1. And now
there was coverage at CAA. I remember it got great coverage. Our script got great coverage.
what does that mean? Everybody in
It
the
means
office is talking about it.
No, they give it to a coverage team who reads it and does notes and gives a review. And I remember it got excellent coverage.
So now, are you feeling like, great, maybe Spike will read it?
No. Spike I'm already at the point where it was going to Spike. Spike's agent liked it. Spike wants to do it. So then
how do you hear that an agent calls you at this point? Because you don't have agents.
Lloyd
says, hey, good news.
Lloyd calls him up. Lloyd calls me up. So yeah, he says Spike wants to do it. He and Kevin are going to rewrite it.
What does that feel like? Because that doesn't mean anything's being made, but to have Spike Lee attached to your project, that's such a cool win. Are you excited yet, or are you pessimistic?
Well, Paul, yes. Danny, no.
Paul, yes. Because, hey, man, we get beat him all the time.
I'm the Jew, and he's the Catholic Italian who knows how to feel success, and I'm always worried about the next thing not working. So Paul was really excited about it, and then we got their script, as you may know, 2 weeks before he passed away. And what we were doing, because remember, Paul didn't know he was dying exactly. None of us did. So we knew it was bad, but we didn't know it was happening right then. So those last 2 weeks of Paul's life were all about he and I, aside from trying to breathe, they were all about he and I.
What do you mean trying to breathe?
He had, remember?
Oh, you mean literally? Yeah, I wasn't sure,
trying to
for
breathe.
him.
Because he had lung cancer.
Yes.
So literally the last 2 weeks were all about us figuring out our notes to send to Spike and Kevin on their draft. And you may or may not know this, but there's two things that were in the last words of your uncle. One was one of the last times I talked to him, he said, I just want one more credit. So we did that, right? And the other thing he said, the last thing he said, this is cool, in a text. It was a text because he couldn't talk. My last words from him were, I don't care about the rest of the notes, just get the kids out of the third act. And that's the last words I had for Paul DeMeo. And I couldn't get the kids out of the third act.
What does that mean, get the kids out of third act? What kids?
In our script, the bomb disposal
Yeah.
kids, that's us, they're kids.
Oh,
we're
they're
old,
kids, right.
Right, they're your age, but to us, they're kids. So the bomb disposal kids, in our script, all the stuff in the bar, all that was going on. But it was just to set up the minefield. And so for Paul and I really don't really want to talk about who did what, but that appeared in that other rewrite from the guy who wrote it for Oliver Stone, where they came back in the third act. And that was our big rag. Like, that was not what we thought. We didn't like that. But honestly, the first time I saw the movie back in December, it was fine. It didn't bother me at all. I thought that's fine.
What are the character name was Paul? Is that a Spike decision? Is that a coincidence? Because you guys didn't have his name be Paul originally.
Of course not. Would you ever name a character after yourself?
Yeah, every one of them.
Yeah. The Temptations.
Oh, it has nothing to do with Paul.
If you think about it, Otis, Melvin, David,
Yeah.
Paul.
Uh-huh.
And
my dad asked me to ask
Melvin.
you that, by the way, and which is reminding me for him to say, tell him I say hello. And I always, when someone says tell him I say hello, I always say maybe, because I don't want to feel obligated to do it. I don't want to feel like I'm lying, and then you have to tell me to tell him. So we'll just leave it at that. And if you want to say hi to him, Dad, he'll be watching.
Steve, are you watching this? I still wear those shoes. Thank you.
He also has the
you.
paper shoes. He said
yes,
Stevie's
and
wearing those.
I actually wore them today, but I have like 5 more pair now. Thank you.
There's a question that this is more, I guess, to Spike, but maybe you could answer it. There was something that happened early in the movie when they met in the lobby. They hugged, and then it cut tighter, and the edit, it was a mistake. And I even rewound it because it showed the hug, and then it showed it again. Like, it rewound almost a half a second. And then I noticed this was something that happened 4 times throughout the movie, which made me realize, this was a decision that he made. I don't know what it was for. I noticed it. I thought it was interesting. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
It happened 4 times.
Because if you're seeing that, I'm worried.
Why?
Well,
it wasn't an accident. It was a choice. 100% a choice.
I didn't notice it.
Yeah, basically it would be like if you and I were to dab and then kind of hug, we do this and then it cuts in. It's not a continuation. It goes back to when they were here and it shows them going in again. So it was a choice that I didn't understand that I noticed. Did
it look cool?
Yeah, it was just...
if it looks cool, then...
but I want to know if you knew what it meant.
I didn't even notice it.
And another choice that I want to know if you understand when they go back in time, all the actors, not only are they playing themselves, it looked like they're playing themselves at the same age that they are.
Right.
What was that choice? Do you know how to explain that?
Yeah, that was a choice. That was his
Is there
choice
any
right
reason?
away. He said in the interviews, he didn't have the budget for the age stuff. In our script, the flashback was only at the beginning, and it was in our typhoon at night. So it was, the whole idea was you would barely see their faces, and you could have younger actors, and you'd see something like, the one guy's glasses or something like that.
Right.
But once they got into the whole story of Storm and Norman, and they added those flashbacks, which Paul and I thought was a great add to the script.
Does that happen before Chadwick is attached, or is that because you have him, you want to give him a little bit more?
No, it was before. It was before. It was there. It was one of the. It was great. It was great stuff that they did with the script. But Spike said from the beginning that he was just gonna shoot him like that, and I was thought that's cool. Except I was a little worried. How are they gonna look? Some of those guys are big in the uniforms. You know what I mean? But the way
What do you mean big.
Well, they're big guys. When you get into be in your 60s, you're not slim like
Right.
you were in your
Yeah.
20s. So I was worried how they're going to, but actually the way he shot it and the way they were wardrobed and everything, it was fine. Like I thought it totally worked. Like it worked way better than, I never for a second thought it wouldn't work, but I liked it better than I thought I was going to.
It's an interesting thing that I've noticed in a lot of movies that it's very cool. Like you can make a movie about anything and you get to create the physics of this world, and whatever you establish, it is what it is. And there could be magic and dragons. You believe it because this is this world. So once it happens, you get away with it and it works. It made me, I was thinking about last night about this movie, but also movies in general. You could do anything, but you don't, because that's not done. That's such a broad sense, but does that make sense to me? What I liked about his decision was, why not do that? But what was curious to me about it is, it was never acknowledged. There was no,
There used to be a line in their script, and I'm glad they got rid of it somewhere along the line. There was a line that said, you know how when you're dreaming, you always see yourself as you are now, no matter what time, what period, what time it is?
that's what I was thinking, is that the excuse?
Except when I read that, I thought, well, I don't know. When I have a dream about something when I was in college, I look like when I was in college. I don't look like old guy. So I was I'm glad he didn't use that line, just personally, because it didn't resonate for me.
So at the beginning of this, I told you that to me, it felt like two different movies. I don't mean two different movies, but at the midpoint almost. And the midpoint, if I remember correctly, was when they found the gold. Would you say that's right?
Yeah, I'd say that.
So at that moment, it went from a movie of, going back to where you came from and, flashbacks of what happened. But we all know where they are now. Whatever happened before, they're here. So we know that these people are okay, and one person, dies. And then, once they're getting into their argument with the gold, and I guess there's already spoilers, but you know the part I'm talking about, when he's backing up and we're getting a little anxious if something's going to happen, but what is it? Because we already saw some people in the bushes. Who knows what obstacles are about to arise? But then when he blows up, which is, what the fuck? This is a different movie. And then you see him and he's yelling. I went literally to the edge of my seat. Like, I think this is a good thing. The feeling was an uncomfortable feeling, but this is what you want in a movie, I guess. What the fuck? And from that moment on, it became fucking intense.
It's always that way. Even in our script, it was that way. But in ours, it was a little different in that, as I said, the only reference to, you met those kids, same way.
Kids, you're saying, is the bomb people.
Yeah, the bomb people. But in ours, they were just literally walking down the road and blam. Like, it's like no foreshadowing, nothing. They're like walking down the road talking about something else, and he blows up. And he just, in the first version...
So they're never introduced until that happens, you're saying?
Who?
The bomb people. Because we meet them earlier on in the bar.
No, in our version, it was exactly the same. They met them at the bar.
Yeah. Then how's that not foreshadowing?
The reason they met them at the bar was so that the audience would know that when he blew up, they'd understand,
Yeah, of course.
it's a landmine. Right.
Yeah.
So...
But isn't that foreshadowing? I mean, when I met those people, I thought, a mine thing is going to be happening.
Oh, okay.
Anyway.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
but I mean, but it's not like...
On the nose.
the idea was they're just talking and walking down the road and blam. If you didn't have to do that, then you'd have to write exposition after it happened, and that'd be really lame, right? If you're explaining it afterwards. So, that's the difference, was it? And I remember that absolute Spike choice. He wanted to do the suspense gag of he's backing up, and the audience is getting more and more nervous. And when I saw it with an audience in December in a full theater, they were going crazy when he was backing up.
What do you mean? They were making noises?
Yeah, they were going, oh my God, no, oh.
And what is that? What? Because really he's just backing up, but the way he did it.
It's just, something, know, right?
Yeah.
You just know.
But on the page, that to me, how do you make that transit? How do you, if you know from writing that scene that you want it to be a suspenseful moment? Because if you just write he's backing up, that doesn't do it. How would you write? Is it in the notes, in the action? How would you?
Yeah, it's in the action.
Could you? I mean, I'm sorry,
but it's always just like and they write the same way Paul and I did. I mean, because I read their version of the scene. He's
backing up. It's suspenseful. They
you just
write that?
the action. No, you don't write it's suspenseful. You create the suspense in the words.
Would you mind giving me a bad example? I'm sorry to put you on the spot of how to do something like that. If I'm reading this for the first time and I want to know that this is suspenseful with just him backing up.
All you'd have to write is he continues to back away from them, step by step. As soon as you start writing that, the reader's going to go, well, why'd they write that? You know what I mean? So it starts to build suspense. But you don't write, this will be suspenseful. You just got to make it suspenseful.
Right. So he's backing up step by step, and and that was a big moment. That I literally woke up from then on out. Not that I was asleep, but I'm watching it one in the morning.
As far as the gears shifting, yes. The gears always shifted on the gold. Right? It's like the gears shifted on the gold.
I don't know that movie. I know of it. I've never seen it.
You should see it.
Treasure of Sarah Madre.
The gears shift on the gold for sure, but it was, there's a foundational script, there's a script, and the movie is Spike. Like, even if you look at the script that he and Kevin wrote, once he starts shooting, it becomes a Spike Lee joint. And the rhythms of the first half of the movie are his, and the rhythms of the second half of the movie are his. Like, the highs and lows are his. Like, he's finding those and hitting those, and he's bringing all that emotion. I think I think before Spike, even in his script, it's not, the highs aren't as high and the lows aren't as low. You know what I mean?
Were you aware of that at the moment? Did you decide you didn't want them to be so high? Was that a choice, or did you realize, we could make these higher as Spike got involved?
No, we stopped writing when Spike got involved.
No, I'm saying the original script, you said the highs are not as high and the lows are not as lows. You could, should you want to and be aware of it, go like this.
I think the lows, it's just his rhythms versus our rhythms. That's all I'm saying. And he's very, he brought a lot of emotion. Look, it was very emotional already, but he brought even more. He brought more humor in some places, and he made it even darker in some places. So it's almost like, it's almost like the dynamic range was extended.
Once, usually how it works is once as a writer sells a script, then they go off and they make it, and that's the end of it. Sometimes writers are still in the process of production. Were you still involved during it at all?
Not at all.
So he takes it, he sends the notes back. You and Paul have a couple of weeks together looking at these notes. You send it back to him.
We never sent the notes.
So
after Paul died, it's a weird story, but we wound up never sending those notes in for a strange set of circumstances. I had some emails back and forth with Kevin Wilmot during the process.
Who's one of the producers?
Writers.
He's Kevin. Kevin, right?
Yeah. But it got into a thing where it was, he said, yeah, send me the notes, and then it was kind of like, it was just a weird situation.
Did you feel uncomfortable because you were alone?
No, I was fine.
No. You made the choice not to send the notes.
Yeah, but no, it wasn't about being alone. It was more the politics of some weird shit. It really wasn't anybody's fault.
What was before this, you had no relationship with Spike, correct? You didn't know him?
Honestly, my real relation, aside from him adapting our work, my real relationship with Spike started about 3 weeks ago, to be honest with you. And
doing press.
Well, if he called me up. He called me up on the weekend about 3-4 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And we talked for quite a while about some stuff. And the more we talk, and when we were doing the interview, then we did about hour and a half of interviews the other day. And then we've also had emails back and forth.
Are there any interviews that you did that I could pull up here or the video?
Well, they haven't popped yet. One is going to be written in the Atlantic, and the other was Entertainment. I think they're both written. And
Well,
the other one's Entertainment Weekly.
If I could get a copy of that before this ends up coming up, then I want to put a clip in or show the picture of it. But I'm sorry, go on.
Yeah. So, but what's interesting is, so in the last few weeks, little by little, the more we do a talk or an interview, or like tomorrow we'll be sitting in some virtual waiting room before we do a Writers Guild talk. What I think is Paul and I and him and Kevin, we're all the same age. We all have the same references.
Yeah.
And as far as you're talking about your uncle and his movie thing, Spike is it's like the same thing. He's exactly the same. A movie guy. He knows all the movie references, and he gets them all, and he put even more in. He just kind of jacked them all up. Like, a lot of that stuff was in there, but he just, went for it. Like, we didn't write, well, I'm not supposed to say who wrote what, but let's just say that he...
Is that a thing? Is that a practice that people like to do where we're all in this together?
I don't know. That's how he's being, and I think it's awesome.
Yeah,
It's really respectful. So when we're doing a press thing, but there's stuff like, but a lot of the movie was researched too. Like the Apocalypse Now Club's a real place in Vietnam. Mm-hmm. It wasn't just to honor the movie, to do it.
They filmed there.
Yeah, he shot at the club, but he didn't find a nightclub and stick Apocalypse Now up to honor the movie. It's actually a place that's been there since 79 or 80 in Ho Chi Minh City.
It was cool to see a movie that was, when you talk about relevant, especially with everything that's happening right now, that it can, just the timing of it and it ending with the donation to Black Lives Matters. It's very cool. But not only that, also it's 2020. It's like it looks new. It's Black Panther's in the fucking movie. It's a new movie. But to see that you guys are part of, and there were two things that I really loved. Just Spike Lee shit. Just there was a shot of the sun when we first see him in the Morehouse stuff, where he's sitting there with his juice and it's up high looking down on him. That's just like,
I love that.
I see that. I go, oh, did Spike Lee make this?
No, I love that.
And then it was the last shot of the movie, but it was able to put it in when they're both sitting on the thing, and that shot where it's coming forward. I think they're probably on a
dolly,
they're on a dolly,
yeah.
But then it's following, but then they're still changing the rack, and it's like, what a cool thing as a director to be able to literally sign a movie just by a shot. Michael Bay looking up is an obvious thing.
He also added all of the historical context and document. That
thought
stuff
that was
makes
so cool.
the movie so much better.
Yeah.
Like when I first saw it last year and I sat down in the theater and that opening montage came up, I was like, okay, I'm in.
Yeah, opening with Muhammad Ali and all these things where it's fictitious characters in a real world. And they're tying it all together with even some of the snapshots that they're taking of obviously the real black soldiers that must have been from the book that you were talking about.
Well, yeah, or wherever, but it's real stuff.
It just really grounded it to this is a story about finding gold. But
great. No, that stuff just
what a fucking movie, man. So here you are now. As you were talking about before, you couldn't get anybody to read anything. What the fuck? You have this awesome movie that's #1 in the country. It's a Spike Lee joint. What does that do for you as far as confidence of the next thing? And also, is there any tangible momentum for you, do you think?
Well, I'm doing my part.
What does that mean?
Meaning I'm writing. It's I don't know. We're going to find out, right? We're going to find out. But what I've been doing, interestingly enough, is Paul and I, there was a couple of guys who were a couple of our favorite students about same time we wrote the script. And I ran into one of them a year ago at graduation, and I was thinking about writing something about, the Oklahoma City massacre, but everybody's doing it. But I can't write any white stories without a black partner. And I don't have a partner right now, right? A writing partner.
What do you mean white stories without a black partner?
I can't write any story. Like a white guy can't write.
You're saying race stories, not white stories.
I can't write racial stories without a black partner to write the other side. So it goes back even further than that when these guys were my students, I had them over to my house, and I have a theater in my house, and I would show them, I showed them a movie that they were writing something of. And a year ago, we started getting together for movies, dinner and movies every Wednesday night. And we did this until the virus hit. And it became a group of great people that are all kind of between 30 and 40, up and coming, or already made it, black filmmakers. And we just watch great movies. Sometimes I invite some of my old friends over also. I'm not always the only white guy in my theater.
Oh, I remember you told me about this when we went to Genghis Cohen.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've been doing this for a bit.
It's been going on for a long
Yeah.
time. So then we're like, we got to start doing some stuff. So with 4 of them, we just finished a comedy that is actually like going out today.
I do remember this.
That's about, it's kind of like the Black Fast Times. It's about these black kids working in a food court in like the shittiest mall in America 2 weeks before it closes. And it's got lots of themes under it, like the death of retail. There's nowhere for these guys to work. It's really funny, and I think it's really funny and really charming. It's got like 47 speaking parts. It's got musical numbers.
When you say it's going out today, what does that mean?
It means Lloyd, the producer. It's like it's just there's not much of us. There's just a couple of us in this. That one, because Tarik is going to direct it. It's low budget, so my former student.
I'm sorry, I don't know who Tarik is.
His name's Tarik Jackson, and he's one of my writing partners right now. But he's also a director. They've made some shorts that are really funny. He's also in a group called Cornbread Kitchen that works at, is it UCB? What's that place called on
UCB.
Sunset? Yeah, so they're a really funny improv group. And the comedy, the movie is extremely, it's hilarious. It's all in that culture, though. It's all in young black kids in a mall and all the other nutty characters we put in there. And it's really fun to write. And now I'm writing with 2 of them. One of them, this is a drama, but his family has a really interesting story from East Texas in 1969. His dad and his uncle were the only black street racers in like the deep South. East Texas, like the deep South, it's on the Louisiana border. And I'm writing that right now. And it's really cool. It's almost, if I'm going to keep using movie references just to make it easy, it's kind of like Black American Graffiti. Kind of, because it's 69 and everything that's going on in 69.
Shout out to the 69. We'll put in some fun, like, sexual pictures now, just to kind of get people on their toes.
Other 69.
Yeah.
The other one.
And
anyway, that's what I'm up to. So coming off this movie...
do you want an agent? Do you have one? Could you get one?
I do have an agent.
Did you
He's
get
very nice.
Did you have an agent once this movie was in motion?
Yes. But it was...
Does that make you feel resentful that,
No.
oh, now you want to work with me?
No, I don't care. I'm
Good.
too old, man. I'm too old. I mean, I don't care. I get it. Like, I've been around a long time. I don't have any illusions about anything. I really want to work. I want to sell more stuff. I don't want to direct anymore, I don't think. I mostly just want to be a writer. I just want to be a writer.
Is it for movies in particular?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So also, I have some TV stuff. I've decided, look, I'm going to be 64, right? I don't want to be in a writer's room. I just want to do features, and I don't care how long it takes. I don't care what it is. And that could be a movie on TV or stream. It doesn't matter. I just like it. I don't want to have to deliver 22 hours.
Could you go back to
13.
Spielberg and talk about
when was
Roger
I there
Rabbit?
before? Oh, that
Didn't
one
you go
meeting.
on Hook?
Yeah. That visit at the craft service. on Hook.
Why not try to revive that? Everything else is being revived.
I don't own that property. I have a bunch of Bilson DeMeo stuff that's really cool that I'm still noodling with, and then I've got new stuff. I mean, my new stuff right now is all pretty. It's all me with sort of. I'm kind of getting behind these. God, that sounds stupid. I'm partnering up with people who can tell stories that I can't tell, that I haven't seen before, and I'm not tired of already.
What's stupid?
So my interest in all this is, like, you were talking about Paul. I've seen a lot of movies at my age, right?
Yeah.
And I'm always looking for new stories, and I think the new stories are in these new voices. They're not new voices. They're voices that we just haven't heard these stories.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this thing's from 1969. Crazy story.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, crazy. Because back then and there, most black people couldn't afford to build a muscle car. You know what I mean? They just happened to have a garage and a scrapyard in his family. It's that kind of story. And they go out to prove that they could do it too. And it's really, it's based on a true story. And so that's the kind of stuff I'm interested in. Obviously, we're all interested in trying to get it the beginning of solving our disgusting national condition. Which, of course, the Bloods has a nice big statement on.
Do you find a way, and I guess just to make you feel more comfortable not having to acknowledge this, because it's the truth, this business is gross. And a lot of the times it's superficial in a way that is necessary. Like the best analogy I could give to it is, you shouldn't care what people think about you. And when you're in high school, who cares about the popular people and blah, blah, blah. But if you want to be the prom king, or if you want to make it on the football team, you have to have the talent and you have to have people like you. And this business is high school. And without momentum and without people, you could be the greatest person, you could be the most talented person in the world, but without somebody vouching for you, nobody's going to read your stuff. So
yeah, and we always had a manager, who did that for us, and he passed away recently also.
The point I'm making is, here you are now with being part of a very big movie. How do you, or if it makes it easier to answer, how would one capitalize on this momentum that will go away?
So I have to speak to Paul and I and just how we always did things because of the generation we were raised in. And I've had people tell me I'm an idiot. Paul and I are of the culture of let the work speak for us. Let the work speak for itself. So a lot of we never did a lot of the networking stuff. Even back when networking was a thing in my era too, meeting people. So we never did. We were both kind of homebodies in our separate homes, and we were 70s guys. And in 70s guys, it was let the work speak for us. And so now, how do I address this? Well, it's not about pimping myself out on social media. I can't. It's more about writing scripts. So that's what I'm doing, right? I just talked about 2 that are going to go out right now that are both written with black partners and have really cool themes. One's really funny and one's got a lot of action, but they're really good stories. And that's what I'm on right now. And I will try to sell those. Mm-hmm. I hope to be eligible again for the writing club, which means
what is that?
It means you might get a call and say, here's a script that needs a rewrite.
Oh,
right?
By club, you mean like just being in the inn?
We used to be in it. They have a list. It's
right.
like, we're going to make Superman.
This isn't a real written down list. This is just
No, they make lists. So
Who's
like
they?
The studio. So let's say the studio is going to make Superman, right? Well, they have a writer's list. Just like you'd have an actor's list when you cast it. And then so we used to be eligible many, many years ago for that list. So if I could get one thing accomplished is to get eligible again.
And what is eligibility? Is that someone deciding, hey, this guy's good, let's put him on the list? Is there a process?
No, man. It's Hollywood.
Right. So it's just like...
It's Chinatown. You know what I mean? It's Hollywood. Yeah. So I don't...
And that's what I mean, like capitalizing on that momentum.
Honestly... half of me doesn't give a fuck, and the other half, I've been around too long, right? It's just, you do the best you can, you do the work. The best I can for me is to write great scripts, right? That's the best I can do. As far as, is it going to work for me? I hope so, but I've had, we've been kicked around for a long time, Bilson, DeMeo. So it's like, you age out at a certain point, so then you got to make yourself relevant. I'll tell you, man, you probably heard this, that Flash show has been running for 7 years. They used our sets, our actors, our costumes.
Do you have any IP in that?
No, of course not, because I don't mean that in a condescending patronage. I mean, just mean it's
Warner Brothers.
It's Warner Brothers IP. But our show was beloved by the creators, and they have kept our people in and out of that show. And Earth 90 is our show. They never once, and we asked like 3 or 4 years. We couldn't even get one script to write on that show.
Did you get a response?
Yeah, next year. The response was next year, and last year, I asked one more time after Paul died, and I had an agent, and it was like, oh yeah, well, we're just getting started up. It's Hollywood, it's Chinatown. It's like, whatever. I mean, it wasn't, as I said to Paul, and he said, Danny, I'm really glad you said this. I said, it's not our Flash, man. Mm-hmm. That's not our show. Our show was the 22 episodes from 1990. We had our shot at it. They're doing their thing. I know how I feel about our thing versus their thing. They're completely different shows.
How would you... what is that?
It's somebody walking with something. It's a
Transformer.
guy pushing a cart.
Well, tell him to push it, not bang it, huh? How would you explain the difference between the culture in the entertainment business of doing a superhero show and movie that, you know, The Rocketeer and The Flash in the early 90s versus what superhero movies are now, and how do you like them?
Well, so for us, we got it out of our system a long time ago. So now that everything's a superhero movie, I like some of them. I think some of them are awesome. Some of them are, some of them aren't. I wish that there weren't so many, because not that I don't like them, I just wish that there was room for more movies. There's only so much money to invest in production, and those things cost $200-400 million a pop. Yeah, they are all profitable, and I do enjoy a lot of them. I really do. But I just, you know, where's the next Lawrence of Arabia coming from? Right? That's expensive stuff. Where's the next? I'll keep going on David Lean. Where's the next Bridge on the River Kwai?
Is there room in this culture for a superhero movie that, you know, I mean, I guess not Watchmen. I can't really think of something, and I'm sure there is, but that is a low budget, not necessarily indie feel, but like a low budget superhero movie that doesn't have to be a $200 million movie. Is there a script or a story that would allow for that?
Everything's been done. You've seen. They made 2 of them. What's the name of it? I really love the first one. Sony.
Are you talking about? And it's not Watchmen. It's something.
It was from a comic book.
The Kid with a Stick.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Shit, I'm just.
We'll put it. I'll remember later, and I'll put it up on YouTube.
I'm just blanking.
Yeah.
They made 2 of them, and the first one was fantastic. It wasn't no budget, but it wasn't some bombastic superhero thing. I can see the logo. It's
Me
like
too.
yellow letters.
Yeah. Jim Carrey was in the second one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I think so.
Yeah. So I think you
feel like a complete failure as a nerd.
Do you want me to look it up and I'll edit it in?
No.
So you kind of answered my question. But there's something that I do want to acknowledge, because you're saying both truths, which is I let my work speak for myself, and it is what it is, and I've been in this business for a long time, and all of these things are true, and whatever. But there's also this idea, hey, man, I'd like to be on this list. You know, it's Hollywood, it's Chinatown. You know, they wouldn't even, they're like, oh, maybe next year. And both these things exist. And
yeah, but I don't live and die on an episode of that show.
No, I know. But I, just being honest with myself, as a stand-up comedian, and I mean this now, but I'm talking specifically more when I first moved out here, I love going up on stage, and I loved hanging out when I was there with friends, because this is the only time I see my friends. So I had a very, very good time during this. But there were times where I didn't have a show that night, and I would go to the Improv or I'd go to the Comedy Store for either maybe someone will not show up and I could get up for 5 minutes, or I'll run into somebody, and you know, 80% of shows in this town are run by other comedians. So you run into people and it's networking, and hey, you want to do my show on Thursday or whatever? And I hated doing that. And one of the reasons I did it, and I'm right for doing it, and it's literally what you need to do, is I grew up, my mom romanticizes a bit, and shout out, Ma, I love you, and I know this is all true, and I think it's a great thing, but it's her dad. It's not just Sid Feller, who has accomplished so many things, and I want to brag. I'll put up pictures. He produced and arranged all of Ray Charles's music, I think after 59, but that's also her dad. So she would talk a lot of times, and one of the things she always said was, and I know it's true because he was a autistic, introverted weirdo, which was he would never go to parties. He would never do anything. He would write his music. A lot of times he would just write it and have somebody pick it up, and that was it. And even back then, my grandma believed if Grandpa would go and do the schmoozing, they would have made more money. You know, they would have done more things. And is that the goal? It doesn't have to be, but it's a matter of fact. I always thought about that. I mean, I never cared. It made sense, but that's a story about Grandpa. And then I move out of here, and I always connected to that with, Mom always said, like, for better or for worse, it's the business side of show business. You have to do this thing. So I would, 7 days a week, I'm at a club. I perform, you know, sometimes 7, sometimes 2, and I hated it. So now here I am in my mid-30s. I'm lucky enough to not have to go to all the open mics all the time. But there's still this game that I don't want to play. I don't know how to play it, but I want to learn. You know, like, what could I be doing more efficiently? I'm doing a podcast all the time. I'm doing shows. I'm making sketches. I'm writing stuff. I'm pitching this cartoon. I'm auditioning for this. Am I efficient? I don't know. Like, I don't think there's an answer, but there's a game to Hollywood that exists. And
I think you just hit it. And it's not going to parties. It's perseverance. You just said it. You said, I'm doing this. I'm doing that. I'm doing this. And do I know any secrets? With our career's been so amazing? I don't know. But we always were doing something. We never were like not doing something.
Yeah.
We always have 2 or 3 projects. I'm still that way to this day. It's all about perseverance, and it's always next. It's all lottery tickets. You just got to keep going and going and going, and don't get precious about one thing. We've wrote other scripts after this. This wasn't our last script, the last tour. And you just keep going. And
it's a recipe for anxiety to me. It's always, you can never be satisfied because you want to keep going, but then you lack being satisfied. And you could take moments to appreciate the wins, but there is this sense of anxiety that...
I really think, I don't know, I'm like off the roller coaster.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going like this. And it's like, maybe after so many years, like that anxiety of I'm up, I'm down, I'm up, I'm down. I'm just kind of always down, and, you know, we get a pop now and then, and, you know, you get a pop, you smile.
But you have a house, you have a family.
Yeah.
You know, and to me, that's all means to that. I want to do this, and I love this art, and it's not just for money by any means. But I'd be lying entirely if I told you that I would be putting as much time into this if I didn't think I could make a living at it. And I want to. The difference between having a 1-bedroom apartment, which I have now, and the next level of having a small house is millions of dollars in Los Angeles. You know, you're either poor or you're rich. And in LA, the house that I grew up in, that was a upper middle class home, is $2.5 million in this neighborhood. How the fuck do I buy a house? And that's where it's not just like, how funny am I getting? I'm funny, man. Cut back to when I had the poop on my hand and he didn't even know what I was doing. Hysterical stuff. But I'm 35 without a 1-bedroom apartment. So there is a different. You
have a
something.
Series. If you ever get to shoot it, you've got a series.
Yeah.
How many did they order? 8?
I think so. 7 or 8.
Is it a 1 camera or?
It's a single. It's a single cam.
Yeah,
it's a dramedy.
So hard to
They
shoot.
do film 3 cameras at a time, which I'm excited about because it lets you improvise more. Yeah, listen, it could be great. And also, I'm feeling myself going down a road where I don't know if I'm backtracking that I don't mean to. I'm just being honest with the point of, like, you know, you work so hard and you want to be efficient. Like you said, you wrote all this stuff, but you need somebody to read it. And having this show, if this show works, you know what one of my first thought, if not my first thought was when I found out my show got picked up, was I wonder what that could do for my podcast. Because the podcast would allow me to sell tickets on stage.
That's smart.
Yeah, but it's exhausting. It's exhausting to care.
You have to. I'll go back to our writing teacher. It's like Paul and I used to hold on to some of this stuff from Milius, from our first class. When he was describing writing the Conan script, I'm telling you shit that I never forgot, right? Mm-hmm. He said, and Paul and I used to use this one all the time. He said, I'm writing this scene where Arnold's pushing the wheel of pain. And in the description it says, he cared no more. And that was a motto of Bilson DeMeo a lot. He cared no more. You can't. You just got to keep going. You just got to do the next thing.
I don't know if those two things are mutually exclusive, though. If I didn't care, I couldn't spend 30 hours a week editing this.
Yeah, I'm talking about caring about the results. That's what I mean about caring, not about the work.
That's fair.
But there's a downside to that too. Now we're having this deep psychological conversation about Hollywood types. But when I said we're off that roller coaster going like that, you also don't get that. Mm-hmm. You don't get the up. Yeah. Right? You don't get the down, but you don't get the up. So it's fine, but I haven't been, like, feeling awesome. because of the movie, I feel like I got another script to write. I swear to God, it's true.
That is to me about expectation, and I think that's a healthy thing. Even with this show, I've waited.
Well, that's rule 2. So I gave you the you care no more. Rule 2 was Milius taught us that the writer should practice the Bushido code of the samurai, because the samurai contemplates his death. So in the face of his death, he has no fear. Now, we heard that in 1980. So the Bilson DeMeo psychology was always, it ain't happening.
That's also the Jew.
It's also a Jewish thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a Jewish thing.
Yeah, that was when
And a Catholic thing too, but he could get more joyous at
sure.
times.
Limiting expectation, managing it at least. Maybe the show, even now, I got a series order and a guarantee, which contractually means even if they don't make it, they have to pay me. Even now, when talking about it, like, because I've been wanting to move. I'm not moving yet. I'll believe it when the check's in the bank.
When you get picked up.
It's picked up.
When you get picked up for the second season.
Yeah. Yeah, but, there's just something that's unfortunate and in this business, which is, I guess the saying is you're only as great, even in stand-up they say you're only as funny as the last show that you did. And unfortunately that matters. And that's why I think it's so important to work on multiple things, to have multiple things.
I agree with you.
But it's nice. Like, I have this show, and I'm pitching this cartoon now that I'm really excited about that I wrote with my friends John and Allison. It's like knowing that if the show works or I sell a cartoon, my agents would get back to me a couple of days sooner.
It's also, cartoons are virus proof, so you can actually make it.
You're saying
it'll probably
because
shoot
you don't need to
before
have a
your
set.
show.
Right. Well, congratulations on this movie. And I don't know why I feel the need to validate this, but I guess because a lot of people say good job. But I want people on the podcast who are listening, who are still here, to know that, this movie, outside of you guys having worked on it, is fucking fire, man. I mean, this is a really, really, really good movie. So check it out. It's on Netflix. And I know you're here. But maybe take the win a little bit.
I read the articles about, projected Oscar nominations for Best Screenplay and all that. I enjoy that.
Yeah, this is a big deal.
But if I ever say that to anybody, they go, "Ooh, don't say that. Don't say that."
Why? Because of
Jinxing
Juju?
it.
Right.
No, I know we've got a really good shot of getting nominated. Everybody on this movie.
You could win an Oscar. Yeah, I know. But that's fucking mental.
If we got nominated, for me, it's all about Paul. To be honest with you, it's just carrying his fucking name all the way up there. It's almost like you couldn't write it. It's like a gag, and it's really. And I say this. Well, I guess they might be watching. It's for Lauren and the girls. That's who it's for. Mm-hmm. That's who he cared about the most. Mm-hmm. So, I have no question at the end of the day that I did right by your uncle. There's no question. I go to bed at night feeling like, it's come on. This is almost like you couldn't write it. His name is on, is everywhere. That's what I said to Annabella. I said, the name Paul DeMeo's name is everywhere.
Yeah, when I've been posting on social media, I already mentioned that you two wrote it, and then I don't write that anymore when I post stuff. But when I do, I put a circle around the names. It's just it's just cool. Of course you did right by him. What does that mean? Who would have ever,
No, it's, he said that was his last request. So
yeah,
there it is. And it's not me. I didn't do it. Spike did it. Mm-hmm. And we, I've said I'm very grateful and very proud. Those are the words I use about the movie. I'm very proud of it.
Did you and Spike ever talk about Paul?
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah?
That phone call when he called, he asked me a lot of questions about Paul.
That's sweet.
Yeah. We've talked a lot. Actually, the latest thing I dropped on him yesterday was I forgot to mention, and Lauren will get a kick out of this, I forgot to mention that this wasn't our first script about Black Vietnam veterans.
What was the other one?
The Death Masters. Story by Richard Pryor. That in 1983...
You wrote a movie with
Paul
Richard?
and I wrote a movie with Richard.
Is it a coincidence that Aunt Lauren worked with Richard?
Of course not. We were a couple of schmucks.
So Aunt Lauren hooked you up with Richard Pryor?
Yeah, I think Richard said to Lauren, because she knew Paul was a kid writer.
He knew that Paul was.
Yeah, with his stupid partner. He goes, I got this idea for a movie, And we were cheap and young, and he wanted us to write it in 3 weeks, which I don't think we pulled off because we were really slow back then. It's like 160 pages. I actually went down and pulled it out of the vault, and I scanned the page and I sent it to Spike because I realized I hadn't mentioned to him because I thought he'd trip out because it had actors that were all supposed to be in it. It was, Jim Kelly, Fred Williamson, Richard, Sugar Ray Leonard. It was a whole dream of Richard's to make this movie with all his friends. And so, that was one of the more recent things I told Spike. And Spike and Kevin were like, wow, that's really a trip. Spike just said, what happened? And I told him.
I remember my mom told me a story of how funny it was that when my brother was born, this Jewish white baby in Cleveland, Ohio, got gifts. And in the same day, he got a gift from Ray Charles and a gift from Richard Pryor. It was just like, who the fuck is this baby?
That's great.
Yeah.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
Right?
Another cool one. I mean, I guess I'm just like a Ray Charles cool thing. I think my intention is bragging, but I just always love this story. Was that my grandparents, they saved it for a bit, but there was just a voice message. I don't remember if this was their outgoing voicemail or it was just a message that was on their voicemail that they saved. But it was just Ray Charles out of nowhere calling and singing, I just called to say I love you. And I always thought that was Ray Charles' song because of that. And I found out later it wasn't. But just, Richard Pryor and Ray Charles, are there bigger black stars of that time? And it's just cool to me that my family got to work with them,
Oh, yeah. Like I said, you come from a show business family.
Yeah.
I love that story of Paul and I writing a strip with Richard. And the story of where we went to Jim Brown's house. That was a trip.
How was Jim Brown involved in this?
He was going to play Colonel Winters. He was the star. And he was also a producer or something. And we went up to his house above Sunset. And it was Paul and I sitting on the couch and Jim pacing in front of us, giving us all this direction. It was hysterical. But interestingly enough, last year at the Super Bowl in Atlanta.
Which is the NFL. It's like the NBA Finals, but for football.
Yeah. I was doing a project with the Hall of Fame, so I went to this Hall of Fame event. And Jim, of course, was like, he's like number one in the Hall. Everybody just loves him at the Hall of Fame. He's one of the greatest of all time. So he's walking out, so I decided to go up and go, hey, Jim. I said, remember the Death Masters? About 30 years ago, Richard, and he starts looking at me, and and there was all these people gathered around, because Jim Brown, and it was also all these other Hall of Famers were at this luncheon. And he starts looking at me, and he walks up to me, and he has like a cane and stuff. And he goes, did you look like the same? I said, well, I was 30 years younger. He goes, I remember. It was pretty funny. That incident of Paul and I on the couch with Jim sort of yelling at us about his notes was hilarious. Like, I'll never forget that. So that was a trip. So I realized, that's a good story. I got to tell Spike that one. Mm-hmm. So I just told him that yesterday.
That's a cool relationship to have with Spike. Got to get him on the podcast. Danny, thanks for coming over, man. Also, for people, I don't know how I'm cutting this. I think the cameras were on at this point, but I asked Danny to bring a pair of clean socks because he was going to be taking his shoes off at the door and walking in, and he misunderstood, so he brought an extra pair of socks, thinking he had to change those. But I'm glad because you're shoeless right now, so you're going to have to change your socks at the door.
Your fans might think that you require these elements to be around you, the N95 mask and the rubber gloves. But no, I have virus fear, and I'm a writer, and I've been at home for 3 months because I can run my department at school. I can do everything.
Yeah, you said you have a green screen. So you're teaching with a green screen?
I can change my backgrounds. I got all kinds of stuff.
What would you need to change your background to for teaching?
I do it for meetings. When I go to, I just thematic. Sometimes if I have this shirt on, I might put Disneyland. I'll match the shirt to the background.
Maybe you'll put like a library behind you.
I have more weird stuff. I've got a whole thing I captured in a video. I've got a whole digital Jurassic Park with dinosaurs going around behind me while I'm sitting there. I got weird stuff. The weirdest one is a roller coaster. I captured from a game, a simulation of a roller coaster. I put the camera in the first seat. That one I can't put on in meetings because it fucks people up.
You're saying it's moving.
Well, it looks like I'm like on a roller coaster. It's the whole point of view, and it goes up and it goes down.
But correct me if I'm wrong, you on a roller coaster is pretty much just like this.
No, it's a plate, like visual effects plate.
Danny, man,
and if I do this, if I start going like this and like this, it matches perfectly.
Okay.
You haven't done a lot of process work yet in your career.
Danny, if you could allow me to just explain to you that I was making a little bit of a joke about you referencing your life as a roller coaster is like this. So I was just calling that
you know
back.
what?
And you know what?
Your callbacks are too oblique for me. I'm too old and tired.
Yeah, well,
But
perhaps
that's your whole gag,
ears are
though.
tired.
Your obliqueness is what's funny.
You know what's interesting, Danny? You probably do, so it doesn't matter.
No, I don't.
Is that I've been compared to Chevy Chase sometimes because I'm one of the greatest, but this idea of like throwing this joke out like this, I'm not trying to like trick you or throw something away.
No.
I think we're on the same page,
But we're not.
and that's on you.
No. Well,
100%. I take no responsibility.
I don't know. I always kind of figured that the consumer or the audience is who we're playing to, and if they don't get the joke, right?
I don't know. You didn't finish the sentence.
That's it. That's it. If they don't get the joke,
Then.
you're the only one. Then if the comic's the only one who gets the joke,
Okay, so even though it wasn't really a joke, it was more. Please leave some comments in the. If you knew what I was talking about when I went like this, let me know. And if you didn't, so if you knew what I was talking about, saying the roller coaster plays. If you didn't know what I was talking about, say "Hail Danny."
you need some interactive elements so you can actually get voting on your podcast.
YouTube is getting rid of polls, and I couldn't be more happy about it.
What do they have against them?
Anti-Semitic. So, Danny.
That wasn't worth a laugh.
If you thought the anti-Semitic thing, Danny,
Not you, me. The poll joke. It was cheap. It was lousy. Anyway.
anything works if you frame it right.
Yeah, okay.
And you push in a little bit, you black and white it, you add the national anthem underneath. We'll show you what I mean. You push in a little bit, you black and white it, you add the national anthem underneath. I guess it still didn't work. Yeah, you're right.
Is that it?
So, yeah, I think that's it. I would say plug your social media, but you don't do that. You have one picture up on your social, I think, because I follow you, and I don't think you use it.
No, I don't use Instagram. My Facebook is robust because that's where old people go.
Yeah.
No, I can't figure out. This is so stupid. My Facebook is all this shit. If I could just get it to send to Instagram,
do you
and
mean
it
send it?
doesn't.
Oh,
You can do it the other way, but you can't do it that way.
Now, do you not understand how to use Instagram, or is this not worth the learning curve of like getting used to it?
You know, I never got into it because it requires a photograph for everything. And you know, I only use social now. It's all PR because after my time in the game business where I got burned for a tweet, I'm extremely sensitive about what I put up.
Yeah, it's harder now than ever. And you know what? And coincidentally, I just tweeted the other day. I was 2 days ago. Who knows when it was? Why do I feel the need to tell you how many days ago it was? So I was noticing because how much shit gets, attention and bad press about things. And you could do movies about anything. You could do movies about abortion, anti-abortion, rape, racism, slavery, anti-women, whatever these horrible topics are, there are movies about it, and that's okay because you're telling a story. But if you're doing it in a comedy, and for better or worse, this is just the observation, when you do it in a comedy, it's not okay. And it's like people take the genre of comedy more seriously.
Really?
than
I
they
thought
take,
it was the opposite.
What are you talking? No, movies are horrible. There are horrible movies.
Yeah, you mean really difficult, horrible topics. But if it's a comedy version of a horrible topic, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm saying if you're
Like
an
what?
artist,
Give me an example.
If you're an artist, you could do a movie about anything. I mean, the Jeffrey Epstein documentary is on fucking fire. And that's a horrible.
Yeah, I didn't watch it.
It's hilarious. And the thing about it is, it works because people have this expectation, and in case for whatever reason, I'm joking, obviously it's not funny, but for people have the expectation of this horrible story, and that, by the way, could be scripted. You could do a dark movie about this predator, and people are seeing it and saying, "Wow, this is horrible. Yeah, it really affected me. You gotta go.
Oh yeah, but
you gotta go see it."
Some of those things you can't. Right.
But when it's a comedy, you
A comedy about a child molester, yeah, I won't play.
Of course it won't play. This is more broad than that.
The comedy.
It's just but the thing is, Chappelle does almost a half hour on what's happening right now, and because he's a stand-up comedian, he's allowed to do it. Excuse me. because he's a stand-up comedian, we think of it as a comedy special. But it's not that funny.
Right.
But that's okay because he's one of the greatest, if not the greatest, to ever do it. Not only has he figured out how to do it, he has the trust and respect of the world.
Yeah, and he had something to say.
That's exactly right. But you know what? Sometimes, a lot of times, comedians have something to say, and their language is jokes. I've gotten in trouble with this, not from a politically correct term, but this roller coaster thing, it didn't play to you. Like, sometimes people don't get that you're joking or know what your joke is, and I'm not just this fucking clown who's being, I got a message recently on Instagram from somebody. Hey man, love the podcast. I'm curious, why are you posting all this stuff, all this political stuff? Because I'm sharing a lot of stories that are going on in the world right now, and my point of view apparently is a political point of view, which is Black Lives Matter. I don't understand how that's a political point of view, but that's the way the world is right now, and that's what social media is. You're not on it. I don't know how much, but there's a lot of videos of people. You understand this All Lives Matter movement? Have you been hearing about?
Yeah. No, I know what's going on.
Yeah. So apparently, there's two sides to this, and
No, there's not.
but yeah, there are. Exactly. I share that with you, but there are people out there who are anti this for whatever racist, ignorant reason they have. But the point I'm making is somebody sent me a message saying, hey man, love the podcast. I hate that you're talking about all these things. Why are you being so political? There's either people that will agree with you or the people that don't, and you'll lose your audience. And I ended up sharing this message, and I blocked their name. I put it on Instagram, which was, oh, I'm a clown. I'm supposed to go here and tell you jokes, and that's it. And that's in a, not to compare myself to LeBron again, but this idea of shutting up and dribble, like these people have these expectations of these things. But the point I'm making is when you're expected to be funny, you're not allowed to have something to say in a joke anymore. Why? Why can't I make a joke about something that's ironic?
No. I know what you're
and deconstructing.
But aren't you talking about... Are you talking about the whole PC joke killing thing? Because that's a whole other topic,
Well,
right?
it's the same topic, and that's just zooming in on that.
Yeah.
But you brought it up with you got burned for a tweet, and I don't want to talk about what that was because I don't know what it was, and context is king, and let's not get into it. But that's the thing. You could get in trouble. You could get in trouble for I get people mad at me not knowing that no. What do you... I'm on the same side as you.
Yeah, I don't engage, in social media in
That's
that
the
way.
difference. That's what I'm saying.
Well, it's like I push everything I post is PR. Like I said, whenever that was 10 years ago, that once I got burned by a tweet, I got media training. And a lot of the way I deal with you is because I've had media training.
I noticed.
It's like everything's a press release. Every piece of social media I put out is a press release. So I'm extremely careful about anything I put out. And honestly, I said a lot of personal things in here, but I'm not a dope. You know what I mean? I'm not just coming in here vomiting all my opinions about everything. I come to talk to you to share these things that I'm sharing.
As a comedian, when your art is talking about your feelings and your perspective and the lack of perspective that you may have and becoming aware of it,
it's pretty weird.
It gets tough.
But talk to Lenny Bruce. I mean, this shit's been going on for a long time.
I've been trying to get him on the podcast for years.
You should.
It has been going on for a long time. As far as my generation is concerned, something changed 8 years ago. Seinfeld and Chris Rock had said, like a while before cancel culture came out, they won't play colleges anymore. I remember you and I talking about, and I, by the way, do this now. I remember, and I'm paraphrasing, but it's basically you said something like, hey guys, I just want to make sure that we're blah, 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 blah. And you got shit for saying guys.
Yeah.
I now, like I'm from the fucking South, say, hey y'all.
That and folks is the other one. Folks and y'all are the politically correct things to say. So what I always wind up saying, because I fuck up and say guys, I always go guys, folks, people. Mm-hmm. I always go guys, folks, people, like that. It's almost like a word that I now say because I don't want to offend anybody and I want to be respectful of every single person that I talk to, but
it's too much to calculate, man.
But me, I have word sensitivity. So yeah, I can say y'all and folks that I don't like to because they remind me of other things that I don't want to bring into my language. So I'm always finding different ways of saying guys.
Well, for my audience, we have it lucky because we have goblins and boppers. So
Do you sell T-shirts? Is that the Boppers or the Goblins?
No, the theme song, the lyrics are Scoot Doo Bubbity Blue. But
You have music?
yeah, it's a great theme song.
Who did it? Did you do it on that piano right there?
Yeah, it's on that piano. It was me and my buddy Casey Abrams. He's singing it. It's a great theme. And also a little inside baseball. This shirt came out, and for those of you that notice, it says Scoop Doo. This has since been changed to Scoot, and excuse me, they're online. I've been selling merch, and my costs are very expensive from the place I get it from, so I'm in the process of changing it. But I've been getting very uncomfortable with how much the shirts are $30, and so I've been giving people promo codes because I feel bad. Promo code's boobs, by the way, for 10% off. But I'm making no money on my merch, so I'm in the process of changing that. But I guess I'm just plugging the shirt here. But there's this thing called fan army names. Have you heard of this? Fan army names. It's kind of like Justin Bieber has the Beliebers.
Yeah, I know about that.
Right. So years ago, when I was on Undateable, and people are doing the fan, I always thought it was so ridiculous. So as a joke, I came up with the Glassman Boppers, and then people just started saying it was ironic at first, and I think it still is, but I think I may have lost it. So now there's the Glassman Boppers, and then when I started this podcast, I made another one as a joke, the TYSO Goblins. And now the Goblin has become a mascot of the show. I have an animator drawing goblins pooping on hands all the time. And I have Team Boppers and Team Goblins.
Oh,
so
well, at least you have two factions. That gives you something to play with.
Yeah.
And it gives people some identity.
Yeah, which they
Things they
need now
rally
more than
around.
ever.
They do.
Uh-huh.
We once had a truck in a show, a glass truck, and it said Eleanor Glassman on it. Like they were the glass men who came and put glass. That was for your family, by the way, in case you know.
I do.
In case you didn't,
I did. And I took that as this.
Oh, okay.
And we could go on for other stuff, and I don't want to dive too much into this, but I do want to mention something I thought about, and I'm sure I'm not the first person to think about, but you said something to root for. It is interesting to see how much this landscape has become extremists and very far in the middle. You have to either agree with all my opinions or you're this, and vice versa. And it does, it's just people yelling about, I can't believe this thing happened. And it does remind me kind of about sports. I remember the first football game I went to as a kid, before I knew anything about sports. My dad, my brother, and me, in that order. And the other team came out first, and everyone was booing. And I thought that was so mean, and I didn't like it. And now I understand.
It's Cleveland.
Yeah, but it's also sports culture. Fuck Kevin Durant. It's like if he was on your team, you'd idolize him.
I actually hate that part of sports culture. It's not, there's certain towns where they still have some dignity and they don't just destroy the visiting team and their fans. I actually hate negative cheering. It really bothers me.
That's what this is now. This is their teams. It's team left, team right. And it's like it's just cheering for your team blindly.
I know.
Blindly. So if I say, hey guys, and there's girls on the email, or if I say, hey girls and there's guys on the email, there's a world where someone thinks that I'm anti-abortion. And it's just like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Well, what about this? If I wear a mask, I'm a Democrat?
Yep. Uh-huh. Do you listen to Joe Rogan by chance?
No.
There was an episode. Do you know Bill Burr? One of my favorite comedians ever.
I know who he is.
Bill Burr was just on Joe Rogan, and there was a clip that I loved, which was organically somehow face masks came up, and Rogan's like, oh, so you buy into that? And Bill's like, I'm not getting into this. And he's like, no, let's get into it. I'm not. And then Joe's egging him on, and Bill shuts it down and says, listen, I'm not going to sit here without a medical degree talking to another guy without a medical degree who's got an American flag behind him, smoking cigars, and pretend like we know what we're talking about. He goes, the CDC knows more than me. Every 2 weeks, I check, am I wearing a face mask? Fine. And then that's it. And it was just so simple. And he's not pretending to know everything. But he's also not saying that this is anti-rights. It's just, I don't know, man. People who know more than me say that this is better for people, so I'm doing it. That's not my political opinion. That's just logic.
It's not political. That's what's insane about the whole virus. There's nothing political about it. The fact that they've made it political is why we're dying, and we're going to keep dying.
Yeah.
That's why I have to change my fucking socks to walk out of here.
By the way, people are... that was the rule. My podcast is called Take Your Shoes Off. I was living in this... There's a world, and I feel like people with OCD could connect strongly to this, which is the anxiety that people are feeling now is what we've always
I get
felt.
that.
You know, like
I get that.
I've always been in this.
I get
Don't touch me. I don't want to look at and it's not even just a germaphobe thing. It exists, but it's also. I used to do a bit on it, and part of me is a little worried, am I not going to be able to now because everybody already thinks this way? But you got to, like, when you bring somebody up on stage, the host always wants to shake your hand. Why are we doing? Right, which thank goodness. But I would look like an asshole. I always look like an asshole. If somebody goes like this and I go like this, a kind, aware person would then recognize, oh, he doesn't want to touch my hand, so then they go like this. And wow, now look how close we are. Our knuckles touched. Could we move on? But there are some people that are like, no, man, I don't pound. You got to shake hands, as if they're like, I'm a better person than you. And it's like, now I'm an asshole for saying, I'm not. Why am I touching your palm? To show you I'm a good guy? So now you're literally coming over in gloves, and the world is changing. And I wonder if that's going to make it easier for people like us.
You.
Are you not like that? You weren't like this before this?
I just don't like this virus. That's all.
Yeah.
I don't want to mess around. I just follow the science of it all.
Right.
Right? And it's all about risk aversion. I'm not normally like that. No, I but when anything comes to life and death, my whole brain shifts. It's not time to fuck around anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So.
Yeah, well, that's how some people with OCD feel. I better touch this handle again, otherwise something's going to happen. So.
No, I'm not.
It's like my whole life, especially in my more recent years, I've been parenting myself logically and saying, Rick, you don't have to wash your hands again. And emotionally, I'm affected, but I've been training myself. It's okay. It's okay that you went outside in those shorts. You could come back in. You don't have to change, because I have indoor-outdoor clothes that the rules are different. If I go to the gym, I can never wear the clothes here, but I've gotten better. Cut to a few months ago, when now all of these things that I've been conditioning myself not to do, the CDC is saying, change your clothes when you come in the house. And I'm like, I'm confused. My OCD has been telling me this forever, and I've been trying to suppress it, and now I'm so confused.
No, you should be comfortable.
I change my socks twice a day. If I ever have to go outside in my flip-flops, I'm worried about what bird air touched it. And it's just fucking, it's exhausting.
How long have you been like this?
My whole life.
As a child?
Oh, it was bad as a kid. As a kid, it was.
Did your brother give you shit for it?
Yeah. He was horrible. Shout out to Matt, great guy. Check out his restaurant, Greyhound, in Highland Park. It's actually very good. He's fantastic, but he couldn't be more the opposite. My brother, I remember as a kid, and he knew how much everything bothered me. So there was one, he's fine with it, and two, he was just like to upset me.
Of course. But
I remember he used to. He would do something, whatever it was, I don't remember, but I do remember how he heightened it. I said, ew. And then he'd go, oh, ew. And I think he found a Mike and Ike in the dirt. We were playing baseball outside. And he dug through it and he picked it up. He's like, ooh, And like he was going to eat it. And I just go, ew. He goes, oh, really, ew? And then he eats it. And that's gross, but that doesn't affect me. That's just my brother. Now we go back inside, and I'm showering and brushing my teeth and asking for more rubbing alcohol. My brother is just on the couch with the dirt under his fingernails. And by the way, part of me is feeling mean, but also, we're kids, and kids get dirty, and that's great. And I would get dirty. When I'm in the house, I'm clean. But my mom, for whatever reason, always wanted candy in the house because it's nice. It was like a centerpiece. You'd have Halloween candy, or there was always M&Ms. There's always a bowl of M&Ms. And Matt liked the feeling of M&Ms going through his fingernails. So he's doing this, and he's eating the cereal. And by the way, people eat cereal out of the box, but, I don't. And also, so now it's like, but okay, well, I can't eat the cereal anymore. So now I have to either decide to not eat cereal or explain to this guy who's bigger than me and fights me, hey, Matt, if you're going to do that with the Frosted Flakes, could we, either the Cinnamon Toast Crunch is mine and the Frosted Flakes is yours, or you could use a bowl. And
you never touch those M&Ms, right?
Oh, to this day, when someone has M&Ms, and I probably wouldn't care if it was someone I knew when they washed their hands, I need to pour it out of the packet. But so I was always, I'm going into the kitchen now. The only time I would eat chips or cereal is if I opened the box. So now I'm home. I'm terrified of people coming into my place. Take your shoes off. Sure. Also, I have trays. For a while, they were like a character of the show. But whenever we'd order food, I need to plate it. I need to put I don't want anyone touching anything. So, yeah, now that the coronavirus is here, I'm heating and boiling everything a little bit more.
Well.
But I've already had these practices forever.
Yeah, I know. Your aunt told me, you're fine going over there. You don't have anything to worry about.
Yeah.
Except for mosquitoes on the balcony.
Yeah, sorry about that. Last week, there was a bee, so I guess it's getting hotter now. But, well, this was good. I'm happy. I have to pee. And if
The last part was funny.
Which part? The
Part
OCD
about you
shit?
and Matt. Like, the idea, if you ever do any flashbacks on your show, the idea of him laying on the couch with his fingers just going through the M&Ms to the other kid who just can't stand the idea of him being touched is hilarious. Because I can just picture him, like, laying on the couch as a kid, just fingering those M&Ms. And you're not even smiling right now. It's like a trigger event as I'm doing this.
Well, you know something I got from that I didn't get then, but I learned it was necessary where I am now, is the importance of understanding your own boundaries and communicating it to other people. I am good at saying, listen, I even said this to you, I said to you when I texted you, I think that the conversation is going to be great, but this is my OCD talking. I just want to ask you, would you please bring socks over and would you go pee before you got here? If I didn't warn you beforehand and then you came here and you said you had to pee.
I wouldn't have.
But I'm saying if I didn't tell you.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, right now, I wouldn't have wanted her in your bathroom.
It's very clean.
I know. Now I know. But
But I
still,
think
you
it's-
don't want me in your bathroom anyway.
No. To be honest with you, getting to know you during this conversation and seeing how seriously you take stuff with the gloves and the mask, it would be easier to have you go in there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But
your kid story, okay? I'm just going
I
to do
talk
this
about it
because
on
it's
stage.
funny. Okay, you talk about the
Yeah.
M&Ms? Okay.
yeah, I don't talk about the M&Ms.
You
I
don't
talk
know
about,
this one that Paul told me about. This is one of the funniest fucking things I ever heard about his kids, about your cousins.
Uh-huh.
This is worth telling. It's funny. So Annabella used to punch Miranda when they were little kids.
Annabella's
right?
the younger one.
Yes. And so Paul said, I'm going to give this jar. You see this jar? Every time you hit your sister, you're going to have to put $1 in this jar. And Annabella ran upstairs. She came down with 3 $1 bills. She put them in the jar, and she went up and went bam, bam, bam. And that, he
didn't
told
know
me
that
that
they
story.
fought.
I thought that story was fucking hilarious. She made a deposit and then went upstairs and pounded her.
Miranda is. I've gotten to know them a little bit. Obviously, they're older, but since I moved out here, I had a new relationship with them. I'm seeing them all the time, not just holidays.
They're not older than you.
No. I'm just saying, they would come over for Christmas and they're toddlers and kids. And the difference between, 5 years when you're 12 is not the same as it is now. And both of them are, I've talked to them. I want to get them on the podcast.
You should.
They're
They're funny.
so funny together. Miranda's one of the nicest people I've ever met in my entire life. And that's a bummer that she got hit. And I was Miranda.
It was what? Oh, yeah.
Matt used to beat me up, not just like beat me up. And my parents would just say, hit him back. Hit him. The way he does, stand up for yourself. And a couple weeks before my bar mitzvah, my brother we were in the den, and I don't know what the fight was about, but I punched him. It was the first time I ever hit him, and I got lucky, and I hit him in the face. And I still don't I believe he was being a little bit dramatic, but he went into the wall, fell to the ground, like I knocked him out. Before he hit the ground, I ran into the living room where my mom and my grandma, who's in town, were crying so much that what I did. And they were, I don't remember if they said, I'm glad you hit him, but I do remember they were like, Ricky, you're okay. Like, it's okay. You're allowed to do this. And Matt and I still fought after that, but there was kind of a difference because right before my bar mitzvah, Matt was always bigger than me, but for like about a year, I became bigger than him, but I didn't realize it. And then I hit him, and I don't know if I have it. I think I do. Maybe I'll show a clip of this. But in all the bar mitzvah pictures and the videos, Matt has a black eye.
You have to show a picture.
Yeah,
cut to picture.
Maybe I'll
bar
cut to a
mitzvah
clip.
Photo.
What's up, my dude? You my brother. I whooped the snot out of you, but I still love you, boy.
I kicked your ass.
Yeah.
Look at your eye.
I kicked his ass. Look at his eye. Look at his eye. Look at his eye.
And we're back. And the point being, even though we fought and everything, the dynamic changed. And I don't think that you should be hitting people, but I do believe in standing up for yourself. And sometimes you got to hit back. And after that, yeah, just our relationship changed, but I never got over the chips and the M&Ms. I still, like, Matt owns a restaurant. He is so professional. I've been in his kitchen. I've seen him work. He's brilliant. I mean, obviously he knows everything about the restaurant business, but he's just a brilliant person as it is. Seeing him in there, it's weird for me. It's still weird for me. Like, I would never have my brother make me a sandwich. You know what I'm saying? And who he is now, he is kind, he's funny, he's professional, he's great, he's an amazing person. But I still have this weird thing about him. But seeing him, like, I've cried in his restaurant before, and I don't know if you knew this, I just cry all the time, I just get watery eyes. But seeing this and, like, having to retrain myself of this resentment that I do feel toward him, which is a bummer, and I mean, we're fucking kids. But it has affected me. Whatever, I don't need to get into this. I ended up talking to Matt about this when he came to Just for Laughs Comedy Festival once, and we talked about this, and it wasn't until I was 30 that I realized, this podcast is going on too long, and I would love to have Matt on and talk about it, but I am
You
a
just got to
certain
pull
way.
a bowl of M&Ms right here when you have him on.
I wouldn't, I don't know if he even eats
Props.
M&Ms.
No, you should also have a bowl of cereal. Let him just do it all and watch you trigger on the other camera. It'd be great.
Stay there. I got to get a Polar radio.
Can I take the headphones off?
I would prefer if you did. Everybody, check out The Five Bloods. My name's Rick Glassman, a scoot doo, bubbity blue.
Scoot doo, blabbity blue, scoop dee. Oh yeah. Skitty bitty